So we are live, everybody. I'm out here with Pennsylvania Transparency Project. I'm really excited about this because he's one of the few First Amendment auditors that is willing to come on and just have a conversation and talk about civics, talk about our rights, talk about First Amendment auditing. So I think this is going to be one of the few videos out there, if any, where you have a state agent talking cordially, respectfully, and getting to know what people say is the other side. I don't think so. I think we should all care about the Constitution. I know, interesting enough, we're both veterans. We both took an oath to defend the Constitution that has no expiration date. So, go ahead, Pennsylvania, introduce yourself to the audience here, and let's get started.
Absolutely. Like SB Leo 911 stated, my name is Pennsylvania Transparency Project. I'm an Army veteran, did 6.5 years active duty with a year and a half in the National Guard. I'm fortunate. I'm one of those veterans that never had to deploy to a active combat zone. But like SB Leo said, that oath never ever. There's no time frame, no time limit on it. And like you said, I'm a First Amendment activist. That's how I refer to myself. I know there's a lot of people who call us auditors, but
Frauditors.
yeah, frauditors too. That's my favorite one. You're a frauditor. No, man, I'm just stress testing my rights.
I saw you getting a lot of hate on your last video.
Oh yeah, oh
I think I
yeah. I
responded
mean,
on it. But yeah, you were getting some hate, bro.
hey, with love, there's hate, and there will always be haters. So even the haters, they drive the algorithm. So I'll take it. I mean, the more people that view my content or my not even my content, my educational process,
Right.
I feel the better off we will be. And before we got online, we kind of talked about that for a quick second.
Well, let's talk about it. Yeah.
Education is important.
Yeah.
So I know I said to you before we started all this that I believe in everyone knowing their rights and everyone having the ability to say, no, I don't need to talk to you as a police officer without you having that reasonable, articulable suspicion to ask me for anything.
Right.
And invoking that Fifth Amendment, invoking your Fourth Amendment to not have unreasonable searches and seizures. Like those are inalienable rights that the founding fathers gave us to protect us against the government. Because, and I'm a history buff. So, with that being said, right, when the Constitution was written, when the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments, was written, was right after we had a revolutionary war against a tyrannical king and tyrannical government. But it's been 250 years since this has all happened. So people forget. History repeats itself. And the more people forget about their rights or don't exercise their rights, the more likely they are to lose them. And that's what a lot of First Amendment activists, or First Amendment auditors, as some would refer to themselves as, like to say. If you don't stress your rights, you're going to lose them because it's true. And another like fact that or statement that I like personally, right, is and I just lost it, but it happens. But one of the quotes that I do like is history is bound to repeat itself. And those who give up freedom for security lose both.
Right.
And we see that in today's America. We see that in the world today as a whole. We've seen that in the last 100 years since World War II ended, and even before World War II ended. But I'm getting off track. I
No, I,
believe,
I I think that's good. I think that's good.
but like I was saying, like I believe that children should be taught their rights just as much as they're taught English, math, science, history, because your rights will always be there unless we lose them. But your rights will always be there with you. Not everyone's going to be a mathematician. Not everyone's going to be a scientist. Not everyone's going to be a history teacher or a literature major, but your rights will always be there. And having that fundamental education, whether you're a young child coming up through the educational system or a grandmother or grandfather who should know how to engage with police officers, how to engage with the public, how to engage with public officials in general, because a lot of people are are misguided in the sense of they know that they're allowed to film the police, but they don't know that they can record federal employees as well because they're public officials, post office, people who work in the town halls, city halls. Now, granted, time, place, and manner, right? Obviously, you're not going to go into a county assistance office, right? Where people are filling out SNAP benefits and Medicare, Medicaid stuff because that's private information. And you don't want to necessarily film that type of stuff. Plus, people can be hostile in those situations because they are asking for help. It makes them feel vulnerable. As someone who understands that, I personally would never go in there and record those people just because it's not polite to them. Just like I never make it an intention to record children. A lot of people are like, don't film my kids. Not a problem. If I accidentally get them, don't worry. I will do my darndest to edit children out because it's not what it's about. It's about education and making sure that not only I stress my rights, but I stress your rights for you because someone else may not be comfortable stressing those rights.
Right. I think, yeah, I think you make some good points there. I mean, you started off with the quote from Benjamin Franklin, basically saying, um, I mean, if you don't exercise your rights, you don't have a reason to have them, right? Like you don't deserve.
Yep.
You're going to give them up. You don't deserve to have them in the first place. I think is the overall sentiment from his letter. Um, And that's funny because that letter was to the Pennsylvania Assembly. So that's probably, yeah. So that make, it's fitting, the Pennsylvania Transparency Project, that should be your quote. But yeah, so that was a letter that he had sent to them. But and that's the thing too, because I think you can admit, and you don't have to, but I'll just kind of I'll just kind of push back a little bit. But and I've seen your content. I mean, it, at least for now, I don't think there's any reason to change. You're right. You have a professionalism about you, but I think you can admit that not all auditors feel your sentiment, right? Like
Oh, absolutely.
there's flavors
Absolutely.
to the First Amendment movement, right? Like some people. I mean, let's just take Ron Durbin from Oklahoma. Guerrilla publishing, like I mean that guy, I mean he's using, like I've said in previous videos and we were talking beforehand, like he uses that big city tactics, right? Like he will
Hmm.
he will find an officer, law enforcement officer, a public official, and then he starts digging in, right? Like, okay, cool, well, um there's rumors that he's cheating on his wife, so let me get that, and he'll get a few messages and he'll post them. Like that's different than the auditing that you do. And I'm sure there's different reasons for that, and I will say that his auditing is very effective. Like I'm not
Oh,
going to
yeah.
sit here and tell you that it's not. But there are levels to it, and I think unfortunately, it's kind of like law enforcement, right? If an officer in Pennsylvania or Ohio messes up, even though I'm in Oklahoma, like I'm gonna be asked to justify why that officer did what he did. It's like I don't know. I've never met that guy before. I One of the biggest criticisms people tell me online is, "Oh, you're a trainer. Well, you should train him better." It's like, well, this officer that did that, I've never met him before. That
They're a
ICE
thousand
agent,
miles away.
yeah, the ICE agent that shot Renee Good and the other guy, like I've never met that guy before, so I don't know why you're holding me responsible for something I didn't do. We don't do that with a lot of other occupations, right?
Yep.
Even in the teacher that essays a kid in New York, nobody yells at the teacher in Oklahoma and says, why did that teacher, you know at Grapevine do that? It's like, well, I don't know. You need to ask the teacher. I'm not part of that school district. But for law
Right?
enforcement, it's a cop that does something that I've never met, don't know, have no understanding of that incident. It's like people want to know, why did he do that? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe he's a bad person. Is that what you want to hear? I don't know. Well, it's true. And the most recent thing, I'm sure you've seen it by now. They're in Newton, Iowa. Have you seen that? Or maybe it's
Maybe
Newton,
not.
Iowa, Newton.
So
The police chief that arrested the kid for calling him and the mayor a fascist. Uh,
no, I have not. I have not
yeah,
seen that
so
news.
he basically went to the federal courts, and the federal court said, "Hey, by the way, you don't have qualified immunity in this." And so basically, he's been arrested a few times, but he went to city council and he said that, "Hey, you're a fascist," and it all stemmed from, I think we all saw it, that college athlete that was arrested for, they said he was drunk, DUI, I can spell alcohol. He blew zeros, and then they said it was marijuana, and they continued on with the arrest. That one,
Hmm.
that one was in the city of Newton,
Okay, I
Newton,
got you.
Iowa. Yeah, and so you know, but here's the thing, rightfully so. I would say that's a righteous. If you're going to call it anger, right? I would call that a righteous anger, right? As law enforcement myself, I've arrested many people for DUI. And I've never arrested somebody for DUI that wasn't impaired. And by wasn't impaired, meaning I was able to articulate using scientific methods, and SFSTs, by the way, are not scientific methods, contrary to popular belief. I've been able to use chemical testing to show scientifically that they were impaired. And so I think with anything else, the biggest, uh, the biggest criticism I would give of First Amendment auditing, which we can hopefully get into, is the same criticism I would give to law enforcement. There are best practices, and some cops do not utilize best practices, and some auditors do not utilize best practices. I think one of the biggest things that auditors mess up on is just realizing that there is that fine line between public and private.
Yep.
Um, and I think you were talking about federal, we can record for absolutely. But as you saw in Cordova, USA versus Cordova, that was 2024 case. Somebody was arrested on federal property, but that was because, like you said, he went through a door that he was not allowed to go through. Right? There are places
Hmm.
in government facilities where the general public cannot go. I
But
think,
don't they have to be like labeled restricted access? I
yeah.
mean,
I mean,
I can only speak for myself. Like, I personally am never going to go into a building, into a room or an office, or even a building that strictly says restricted access employees only. Like,
yeah,
and
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 I
that's
think
best
there's a
practices, you know?
I think, well, here's the thing. I think there's a good point to that. But like, for example, um, take a jail, right? Like,
Yep.
I guess the question would be, and this is a good exercise, right? This is a good case law exercise to kind of run through, right? So if you go to a place and you know it's a jail, but you see no signs, and secretly finagle yourself into where the inmates are, if you were to get arrested, are you gonna, I mean,
Justified.
how good is your argument gonna be, right? Because the signs don't codify law. Does that make sense? Like, the
Correct. But
sign
I
doesn't
mean,
codify law. Just like, even in, like, a great person that I like on this, right? Um oh gosh, what's his, I've done videos on him. He's in New York. Sean,
oh
um
yeah, Long Island audit.
Long
Yeah.
Island Audit, right? He makes a
Yep.
great point, because there are plenty of times he goes into places that have signs that say no recording, and what does he say? What does he
He
say?
says that the sign doesn't
The sign
justify,
doesn't.
is in case law. Yeah,
The sign
it's not
isn't. The
justified by
sign
the
isn't
law.
law, right? Is that fair? The sign isn't law.
In
So
certain circumstances. I mean, it's obviously just like Poster 7 for postal services, it says time, place, and manner, just like First Amendment. There's been many cases where, and I'm not up on case law like you are. You're very well educated in that, and I love that about your content. Right?
right.
I
So I
love
would
that you
just,
bring
yeah.
that
So
up.
again, and it's like, ignorance is not an excuse for breaking the law, right? So
Correct.
again, for a jail, right? So I guess the question would be, like, we have 1966 Florida versus Adderley, right? That says that that's why you can't go onto the premises of a jail, and there's certain conditions that have to be there, but nowhere does it say anything about signage, right? So the
Correct.
question is, if you were to sneak into a jail and get arrested, are you going to say, well, there was no signs here? And so, well, the signs don't make the law. Now, the signs are a good reminder. That's
Hmm.
professional, right?
Yep.
It's just like somebody's house, right? If there's no signs that say I can't go in your house, can I still go in your house?
Not without my permission because
Right.
that's private.
Right, that's private. So the question is, right, when you're going into a government building, there should be signs up, but let's say there aren't signs up and you go in there and somebody asks you to leave and you say I'm not leaving because there's not signs, is that going to hold up? Because now we're gonna
That's a good question. I
that's gonna
mean,
be right
that is a
because
very good question.
well,
Yeah.
I'm telling you that you can't be here. Well, we know that there's public thresholds, right? So the case law on that is firm. The sign doesn't change what is permissible and not permissible. Does that make sense? Like the
Oh yeah.
sign isn't law, right? The
Yep.
sign's a good reminder,
Hmm.
right? But if you are in a place where you clearly shouldn't be, right? Like if you go into a judge's chambers, well, there's no signs. Okay, you're right. I understand there's no signs. We're going to get those signs up. I just want you to know that you're in a judge's chamber. This is not open to the public. I'm going to ask you to please leave. Well, I don't have to because there's no signs. So if there's no signs, I'm allowed to legally be here. Well,
I don't
and
think
but
you'd ever catch me doing
no,
that, but
but
I
you will
understand
catch
where you're
other
going
people
with it.
doing it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We have videos of it.
Oh yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like this sign doesn't make the law. It's a good, I'm not. I can't. Let's say I'm not going to. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, you just didn't know. Can you please leave?
Yeah.
But if you don't, right, the fact that there wasn't a sign there doesn't codify the statute and it doesn't codify the case law, right? Well,
Correct.
cool. Well, Florida versus Adderley says what it says anyway, so therefore, go ahead and turn around, put your hands behind your back. I gave you an option to leave, right? So when we're talking about case law, right? Because remember too, and this is where a lot of people don't like me, um, from your side or the perspective, right? Um, I have a law degree, right? I care about civics and I care about rights so much. Now, the reason for it is twofold. Like you, I took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. I believe that has no expiration date. I fully understand what the purpose of the Second Amendment is, and we can talk about that here in a minute if you'd like. Um, I understand the implications of the Second Amendment, right? I
Hmm.
understand the Second Amendment are because at some point, society, the United States of America, the citizenry may tell, hey, Mike, guess what? Like you're gonna have to choose a side. And depending on what side you choose is going to determine whether I use this weapon against you. Let's call it what it is. That is the truth. It's against tyranny. I
Yep.
understand that as a state agent, I represent the government. And so the purpose of the Second Amendment is to control government tyranny. So I understand the purpose of the Second Amendment is for the citizens to decide if they're going to put that weapon against me. You're not going to hear, I don't know if you're going to hear too many cops publicly say that, but that's the
I,
truth.
I don't think you would ever hear besides you, maybe Mr. Green, who was, is he still law enforcement?
I
Not to
think
get
he's
off
still
track.
certified. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
think he holds a cleat certification. I don't know what his cleat certification is because I didn't go too much into it. But we have some training coming up that we're gonna certify for cleat hours for him.
Heck yeah. That's awesome.
But yeah, so but I understand that's what the Second Amendment's for. So for
Hmm.
me, it behooves me. You like that military word? Behooves me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now,
It behooves you.
so to piggyback, no, I'm just joking. I'm going to give you PTSD here.
Ah, please.
The
No.
the
Let's not
purpose,
go down that rabbit hole.
right? I know. So I do it because it's important, right? But also I understand that there's an adjudication process. So if I want
Hmm.
to get charges to stick, right? Because and this is how I see it, right? I take ego out of it. There's no ego in policing for me, but I do understand my reputation is based upon the work product I produce. Is that
Exactly.
fair? So if my job is to build a house and I take a bunch of shortcuts, you're going to be able to see those shortcuts, right?
Exactly. Yep.
But if so, my job is to produce a product. My job is to determine if there's reasonable suspicion, probable cause, and then if there's probable cause, can I build a case that brings it to the point of preponderance of evidence? Because that's
Exactly.
what's going to be required, beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, that's what's going to be decided in the adjudication process in a judicial setting. So there's a big difference between, hey, I'm handing my district attorney or magistrate, 15 pieces of paper, and hey, here's a 4-inch binder.
Yeah.
When I
You do
drop that
your work. You do
when
your
I
work,
drop
and
that
that's the
4-inch
important thing.
binder with digital forensics, like, yeah, I would go ahead and, I mean, it's up to you, but we can go to court or you can just settle, right? So, and I'm not here to toot my own horn, but since I've been in Oklahoma, I have not testified in state court once because every single time it's been they have taken a plea or something, not once. And they'll wait for me to show up, so I've gone several times, but I show up ready to go, suit the whole 9 yards. And every time I show up, they're like, "Nah, I'm good," right? And so I say that to say, right, it's important because there have been times, I have arrested numerous people that claim, and I don't know. Here's the thing, I don't know I'll make jokes on social media and I'll say sovereign citizens personally, and maybe you can. I don't know how to define. If you define yourself as a sovereign citizen, I'll take you at your word, right? If you define yourself as a First Amendment activist, I'll take you at your word. But I don't know what quantifies that to a level in which, as a society, we can say yes. Does that make sense? I think that's the interesting
Absolutely.
about sovereign citizens, right? So I have arrested many self-proclaimed sovereign citizens, and it's because they truly don't understand they think they understand case law, and maybe they understand it from what they want to understand it from. But a great example, a couple years back, there was I responded to a call for service for somebody that a marijuana head shop had called and said, "Hey, we believe this person is trying to make a straw purchase for marijuana." Meaning, the guy was waiting outside because they have marijuana shops have great cameras, by the way. Which I think the
Yes, they
whole
do.
cannabis auditor stuff I think is hilarious when people go out to if you want to piss people off, be on a public right of way and record cannabis shops. It's like do you realize how good their camera footage is?
Stay tuned.
Yeah, I don't think you realize
That's
how
all.
good they're.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
Is stay tuned because
I don't think they realize how good their footage is.
oh, I meant on my end, stay tuned because I'm always working on new things, right? So
Hmm.
like, and I will give you a little bit of, and I can only speak for me, right? How I approach things when it comes to my activism. Like you said, if I'm in a courthouse and I go into a judge's chambers and I'm asked, "Hey, sir, you need to leave," I'm going to go, "Okay, not a problem," because I don't want to get arrested. That's not what this is about. A lot of people believe that First Amendment activists or First Amendment auditors are out there literally, and I've heard cops say this before. This is why I know this. Even cops think this too. Not necessarily you, right? But there are cops, there are people out there that believe that First Amendment auditors, First Amendment activists do this literally just to sue. There might be some people that do that, right?
I think by and large, I'll just
But
be honest.
most
I'll be
don't.
honest. I'll be honest. I think so. Again, I come from the Portland area. Um, by and large, right? I think that you have a few flavors of activists.
Absolutely.
I think you have your amateur activists that just like to go out there and it's a hobby, right? They like to go out there, they like to flex their rights. Then there's other people that are do it. They're very ideological, and in Portland, I know a lot of very ideological um, activists that they're there for the love of the game, right?
Hmm.
This is about the love of the game, and I've met those people and I've talked to those people because so something a lot of people don't know about me. When I was in Portland, I was on Mayor Ted Wheeler's executive protection detail. I was a sergeant on his detail,
Nice.
and so I knew, and I was there for the summer of love, right, as they call it. It was not a summer of love, by the way, but I've got to meet a lot of these, and I'm going to be releasing some of these videos that I have that I've just been kind of waiting. And now that I'm talking to people like I think I'm going to do something. But I have a lot of personal videos that I don't think people have, I don't think anybody's seen before during the time in Portland. So you remember when, gosh, he was what's his name? Asian guy. He's a self-proclaimed, um, oh gosh,
I have no idea what
self-proclaimed. So
reference.
he Asian guy, gay, self-proclaimed gay guy from Portland. He was attacked. When oh gosh, I can't remember his
I have
name.
terrible memories, so
Yeah. So anyway, I was there during the Portland during that time. Um, um, he's a legit journalist, and he was attacked in Portland. I was there for that whole um, I was there for that whole ordeal, and I say all that to say, like there are Andy No, there you go, Andy No.
Okay, yeah, I know who
Yeah,
you're
I
talking about.
was
Yeah.
there when when all this happened. I've met him, and he probably doesn't remember me, but when I was on the detail, like I saw him regularly. I say all this to say I've met these activists that are like, dude, we are here for the love of the game. I know
Yeah.
people in the Antifa movement, like it's ideological. Like I'm here for the love of this. I love this. It gets my blood going. I get it. And then you have activists that are trying to actively get themselves in situations where they can change case law. And there have been many successful. There have been many successful cases, especially that stem out of Portland under Chief Outlaw when she was police chief. And then you have the other activists that I think are very much about rage bait, clickbait, and this is a very good monetary. You know, it's for the money, right? And so I think that those are like the four flavors. So do I think, but do I think the majority of people are out there? Do I think a majority of activists are out there because they want to get arrested and sued? No, I don't. I think a majority of activists are there primarily because it's out of principle and they love it. I think they get you get into it and you love it. And people think
Yep.
that's crazy, but think about it. I was in the military, I did search and rescue. I loved it. Most people think it's crazy to jump out of planes and rescue people. It
I
is.
don't know. That sounds like fun.
It is, but I loved it, right? I love it. Like I love it, right? People think, well, skydiving's crazy. People love it. I think a majority of people that are in auditing, I think you love it. I think it excites you. I think that you get a rush, you feel alive, you feel a purpose.
Hmm.
And if there's money associated with it, that's not a bad perk. And
Exactly.
I think a majority of people that's what it is. And I get hate from that when I was doing stuff with the Long Island audit. I explained, well, there is a monetary incentive to this. At this point, he makes really good money from what he does, and he should. That shouldn't be a bad thing, right? Like, take any
Correct.
I'm going to do something horrible here because I think, let's just be honest, right? I have a company, right? I love to train. I train. I love it. I do tons of free training because I think it's important. I do a lot of training with churches because I think it's important. But I also like when I get paid to do it. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say
Yeah.
that I don't, right? OnlyFans girls, right? I think
Oh my
OnlyFans
gosh,
girls.
right?
I think OnlyFans
Yeah.
girls get into it because there is a monetary incentive. And I think there's a
That's
lot of auditors, and you can go to these auditor channels. They'll put out 40, 50 videos. They don't get what it is, and then they get out of it. Well, why is
yeah.
that? Because it was a monetary incentive. They were in it because they wanted some money and they were upset. They wanted to see if they could make money off it, and it didn't work, right? So it's like anything else. Like it's there's a mixture, but I want to say the majority of ones I've met and I've had the privilege of getting to know and talk to, because this is going to sound crazy. I know a lot of First Amendment auditors, some big name people, and I know them personally. By personally, I mean I've talked to
But that's the
them,
thing, though.
and I think they're in it because they're principled. Now, do we agree on everything? No. Can we have case law differences? Yes, but at the end of the day, we'll never know. It's kind of like what we were just talking about. We'll never know until somebody exercises it, gets gets caught up, and then it
Yeah.
gets adjudicated, right? Until that judicial review process happens. Some of this stuff we're in the dark with. We just don't know. I think one of those things, and I hope we can talk about it if we have time, is these. I talk about ICE a little bit. Just the activism with ICE and all that stuff. If you have time, but
Oh yeah.
I think this ICE stuff is
We
going
can
to
talk. We can get
generate
rid
some
of
case law
talk.
that I think a lot of people are
Oh
going to
yeah,
be
I
shocked.
definitely think it will for sure. So like, I will. I was one. I love my rights, and
Hmm.
I'm willing to. Clearly, I'm willing to die for them. I mean, you don't join the military if you're not willing to give that ultimate sacrifice. Now, granted, there are people who join the military because they want free college or whatever, but they still take that oath. I'm in to my activism for one reason and one reason alone, or I guess two reasons: education and a stress test. Right? That's it. I'm not there to get arrested by cops and make money from suing the city. I don't think that proves anything. I think that hurts the people more than anything. I think that it's unfair that the taxpayers have to pay that money in general. And I think we kind of talked about it a little bit. I don't believe in qualified immunity, not because I think that didn't have it. I think, well, I mean, I don't think that cop shouldn't have it, but I think it having that qualified immunity gives some police officers that feeling that they can do whatever they want and there's no consequences for their actions.
So I
And
think
that
that's a great
that pisses me off.
I
That
think
that
that's a
really
great
pisses
point.
me off.
I think that's a great point.
And
And I got blocked. I think I did a video. If you haven't seen the video, I'll send it to you afterwards. I got
okay,
blocked by a pretty big name law enforcement officer on social media because he kind of it was when the whole Renee Good shooting thing happened and everybody was talking
yeah,
about qualified immunity. He got on his high horse. So look, here's something you're never going to hear from a cop either. Anyway, I reached out publicly to him and I reached out privately to him, and he instead of reaching back out privately, he decided to try to go after me publicly. Didn't end well for him because
wow,
here's the problem. And this is where this is why I believe auditing is so important, right? And I'll just be again, I don't think you're going to hear this from any cop anywhere. But First Amendment auditing has forced law enforcement to become more intelligent quicker because
yes,
law enforcement itself refuses to change in a lot of different
yep,
ways. And
yep,
there's no better way to change than for your citizens to be smarter than the police that are supposed to enforce the law. And so, in that
agreed.
regards, that is super important because I wish. Here's the crazy thing. So, I have a police training company. I do a lot of training for law enforcement. You know who I train more than law enforcement? Everyday citizens,
Civilians,
you know, right? Because everyday
oh yeah,
citizens want to know how to shoot, defensive
yep,
tactics, use of force, case law. I can't get a police department to pay full price or a discounted price to send one or two guys, but I could go to a church, I can give them a church rate, and I can have 40 people show up. Right? Like I can
that's
feel,
sad. That's
I
sad.
can
Like,
feel, I can. So I did stop the bleed course um, last week. I'm talking when I mean stop the bleed, like I'm talking like military AIT,
yeah,
right? Like yelling, screaming, sim rounds, blood, the whole 9 yards, right? We
oh
had role
yeah,
players. We had role players. I had the training. I had one that's training staff NCOs from Oklahoma National Guard there. It was the real deal. Like we put on a real product.
oh yeah, dude.
And we did it for a couple reasons, right? For advertisement purposes for our company, but also, you know, violence against everybody, churches, secular, like it's all violence is just going up. And so it's crazy because I opened it up to law enforcement as well. And I told law enforcement they could have it for free. We had,
Really,
we only had 3 law enforcement officers show up,
wow,
but I had citizens out the yin yang doing this training wanting to, and so that's the problem. Even for officers, when you give them something free, they don't care, right? And
yeah,
I don't know how to change those standards outside of just increasing the standards, but there's a lot there to unpack, but ultimately that's what auditing has done, right? You have taken everyday people that have said, you know what, I'm invested in my rights, I'm going to learn enough about my rights, and I'm going to go stress test it.
yep,
That has launched law enforcement further than it would without it, right? Because think about it, like 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, shoot, I can't even say that. Out of Newton, Iowa, we still have police chiefs. And if you look at his resume, you're talking FBI leadership courses. He got an Iowa combination state medal. Like this guy, if you look at his resume, he has it all. But you
what you
made an
do?
arrest for somebody calling you a fascist in public forum
Yeah,
at a city council meeting.
that
You
just sounds
can't
like
make
he's
this stuff
petty.
up. You can't
he's
make
like
this stuff
he's
up.
got thin skin, man. He's
You
got thin
can't make
skin.
yeah, you can't make this stuff up. And so, you know, that's why I am not going to be the person that says that First Amendment auditing is bad because it's done a lot for us. If law enforcement were to act constitutionally, no offense to you guys wouldn't
I
have a
wouldn't be
job.
around. Exactly. And that's what it's about, dude. Like, and you saw my video where I was outside that bank. And I think that's the first video that you saw of mine. That's when we started to
Hmm.
connect and talk and stuff. And you know, that one detective, the first guy that showed up, he was okay, right? Besides, trying to violate my fourth, which I will give him benefit of doubt because he doesn't have that educational background.
So let me ask you a question. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've seen my temp. Have you seen my template? My detainment
Yes
template?
and yes and no. I mean, I haven't. I'm just like you. I'm busy. I will do more
Right.
of my research on that,
Yeah. So
like
the only
for
reason why I
your
say that
purposes.
is because you're on the front lines of this stuff, right? Like, so I have the reason why I'll be honest with you. The reason why I created the template is because I had some parents come out to me. Um, the driving course that we have in our area is just garbage, right? No
Hmm.
offense, and
Most of them are.
for those of my viewers that see me know who it is, what it is. Sorry, but I've had a lot of parents come up to me and they're just like, "Hey, the driving thing that we have, my kid doesn't barely knows how to drive, but one of the kids got into a fender bender where an adult just took advantage of them, right? Adult came out, hit, gave them document, like was like, oh well, I'm gonna go call the police. I'm gonna go to the police. Like basically convinced the kid to just like, okay, I'm leaving now. And the kid left and was there, called his mom, and well, where did he go? Oh, he said he was gonna go get some paperwork or something, and I'm just waiting for him. The guy left,
Yeah,
and then the kid, this is a 17-year-old kid, right?
he
And
doesn't know
so
any better unless
did
he's taught.
nothing. And I'm like, well, what were they taught? Were they taught anything in driver's ed? Like, were they taught what to do if they get pulled over by the cops? Were they taught what to do if there's a fender bender? Nothing. And so it's like, okay, so you're teaching a kid to drive a missile, but you're not going to teach them any of the implications for it.
Yep.
And so I had a couple parents come up to me and they were concerned. So I created a template. And this is a
Oh yeah.
template that I would share with my kids. This is a template that I would share that I would do myself because let's face it, right? Like what happens because I'm a big Puerto Rican guy. What happens if I stops and detains me, right? What do I do? What happens if a cop stops and detains me? What do I do? Like I need to have an answer for myself. Like what
Yep.
happens if somebody sees me as a threat on the other side? So I created this template and I'll send it to you. I
Appreciate
don't know
that.
if I can put it on my I don't know if I can put it on my screen here if I can share it with you. Let me see if I can share it with you. Um, I don't know. Can you see messages at all?
Give me 1 second because I have this propped up. So.
If you can see messages, I'll probably just share this with you, and
Okay.
then this is good. You just tell me what you think about it.
Okay.
You can be like, "Hey, I think that's garbage," or "No, I think that's pretty cool," or whatever. But I'm gonna see if I can't share this with you live here. But I call it my detainment template because my honest question for First Amendment auditors. And let me just ask you a very
Yeah.
let me ask you the tough question. I think everybody might be wanting to know. Um, so and I think would you agree that the standard pursuant to Texas v. Brown, 1979, that the threshold for a law enforcement officer to forcefully detain you is something called reasonable articulable suspicion. Is that something that you, um, I guess, would agree with, or what's your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on reasonable articulable suspicion are exactly as they're written out, right? Do you believe I committed a crime? Are you stopping me in the process of me committing a crime? Or do you believe I committed a crime? The only one that I don't agree with, right, is probably do you think I committed a crime? Because in that instance, right, they can stop anyone and ask them for their ID, whether Terry v. Ohio matters or not, right? Because
Right.
it's a very gray it's very gray area, and I think I think that if there was a decision made or what does the Supreme Court call it? Help me out here. You know better than I do. Where they
What are you trying to explain?
when they decide something, when they write it out.
Like a case law, court precedents?
Yeah, the precedents when they their opinion. There we go.
Right.
When they come out with their opinion that
A judicial opinion.
yes, yes, sir, exactly. I think that they need, and there probably will be at some point yet another case law that comes out of. Do you believe I committed a crime? I think that at some point there will be some case law that has to come out because it's gonna happen, right? Like I could be walking down the street taking video, right? And the cops can be like, "Well, they said that you were trespassing, and we saw you take one, this much of a step on their property. now you have to show me your ID. And that's just
Well, I think it was so
a
that's
very
a
generalized statement. You know what I
well
mean?
that
Like,
so that's a pretty good point. So I guess here's I just sent it to you on the gram. I sent you that template on the gram. So I guess here's the question. I think this is where a lot of this is the conversation I've had with a lot of First Amendment auditors. So going back to the story that I started that I didn't finish with the cannabis shop, right? So a guy shows up. His it's There's one gentleman, two females. Cannabis shop sees him pull up. They back in. He gets out. He starts smoking a cigarette. The the two girls go inside. The two girls go inside. Um, they ask for their marijuana ID. The mom doesn't have one. The daughter does. The mom steps out, goes back, hangs out with the other gentleman who happens to be her husband. The girl that has the cannabis card, it's the daughter. She goes in there and she tries to buy marijuana.
mhm.
They say, "Hey, we can't sell to you because you were just in here with somebody, and we don't do straw purchases." Now, does that person have any reason to believe that she was or wasn't? I don't know. Right? I wasn't there. Wasn't Didn't incur my presence. But they didn't like it. They didn't want to make this sell at all because cannabis shops, think about it. There's a lot of regulations on them,
Yep.
right?
But they
So
also have the right to deny business
yeah.
to
So
anyone,
yeah,
anywhere. So,
selling $40-$50 worth of weed to these people probably just wasn't a factor for them. So they called
and they don't
us.
want to get sued themselves. You know what I mean?
Right.
Shoot,
So I
come on.
show up. As soon as I show up, he's verbally abrasive. You do this because I'm black. He starts doing the whole thing. I understand very quickly that I'm not going to be able to have a conversation with this person.
Yeah.
That's very so. I just ignore him. I go in and I take a picture of his driver's of his license plate and I start running it. He starts getting, "You're not allowed to do that, whatever," and I just ignore him, right? Because nothing I say is going to matter, right? Kansas v. Glover
Yep.
says I can. People versus Bushley says I can. And then I tell him that. I'm like, "Hey, I'm doing this pursuant to Kansas v. Glover, People versus Bushley." And then I just ignore him.
Also, also the First Amendment,
Right,
because
right, exactly. Right.
there's no
But
trespassing your eyes
there's a
in
lot of
public.
people.
And
There's a lot of people that believe that as a law enforcement officer, I'm not allowed to run your information without probable cause. That's not
oh
true at
no,
all.
you definitely can.
I
You
can't.
can
What I
ask me
can't
for
do is
my
I
ID.
can't force you to identify yourself. But if I
Exactly.
find it through other means, it is what it is.
Exactly.
So as soon as I did the return, the car came back to an individual that matched his description that didn't have a license, has a suspended license, and had a warrant. So I said, "Hey, send me a CAD photo." And so we're in the digital age, right? So
Yep.
within 30 or 40 seconds of him, cursing at me, I was able to get a picture. Well, as I was going back to my car to grab something else, he's like, "Well, F you, I'm leaving." He gets in his car, it starts to drive away. Perfect. I have two crimes. I have the warrant, I have the driving while
Yep.
suspended. So I conducted a traffic stop, made the arrest. It was this big ordeal. Um, and
And you
then
see, that's one of those things where you had the probable cause to
100
pull him over. Now,
100%. And
now if you pulled him over because he flipped you off,
sure,
that's a completely
right,
different
right. And
scenario. And I
yeah,
don't think you would, but
this is what I'm saying. Like he fancies himself as a sovereign citizen, and during the so and let me during the traffic stop, like this was one of those things where we had to force him out of the vehicle using force. We had 4 or 5 officers that had to jump on him, put handcuffs on, the whole 9 yards. I'm saying that all to say, in his mind, he thought he was 100% correct. He hired a lawyer, he got the body cam footage and everything, and all of a sudden, the lawyer's like, "What do you want me to do with this?" Like he literally, because I remember because the district attorney, I had just moved to Oklahoma at this time, that was not familiar with me. She literally pulled me in her office and she's like, "Did you really read him case law?" I was like, "I did." I didn't read it. I just quoted it to him. She's like, "You quoted People versus Bushley and Kansas v. Glover to him?" I said, "Yeah." And then you ignored him the rest of the time. I'm like, "Well, yeah, why would I need to talk to him?" "Well, why'd you do that for?" "Because it looks really good on body camera." She's like, "Where are you from?" I said, "Portland, Oregon." You know what I mean? So it was one of those things where it's like the defense attorney was like, "Did this guy really read case law to him roadside?"
why not?
Yeah,
You're
why
you're
not?
taking that
Right.
time to educate
And so
yourself. You're
the
taking, like why wouldn't you? Like, you're the
but
type of officer that I would want if I ever broke the law. You are the type of officer, and I'm not saying I will, but you're the type of. I know you're a state agent, right? But you're also a
right.
licensed police officer,
Yeah, I am.
um,
State law
or
enforcement
certified
officer.
police officer.
State police, better way to
Um,
describe it.
oh, okay, there you go. You are the type of guy that I would want to arrest me because I know that you did your stuff. You did your homework. You made sure that everything that I did, you had a reason for it.
Well,
Like
here's
you have
right.
all that information easily accessible. You
Well,
did everything you were respectable about it. I mean, I'm never going to get arrested, I
right.
hope.
But here's
But
something else though. But here's it goes back to your point. So here's the problem that I see us running into. So reasonable articulable suspicion, can we agree is not a high threshold?
correct.
Like
I
it's not.
100% agree.
It's
No, it's not.
super low. And so I say that all to say um we have some Supreme Court case precedences out there. So are you familiar with USA versus Arvisu 2002?
No, I'm not.
This is something that I think every first, if I had to tell a First Amendment auditor um, what they need to know as far as case law, I would give you USA versus Cordova 2024 and then USA versus Arvisu 2002. And the reason why I say that is because the court noted, I'm going to read this to you. The court affirmed that an officer was entitled to make an assessment of a situation in light of his specialized training and familiarity with customs in the area's inhabitants in order to make a detainment, in order to detain somebody. So in this case, an officer's suspicions were aroused by a location of a vehicle in the desert of rural Arizona. The vehicle slowed when it approached the officer. Children in the minivan waved at the officer in a manner that struck the officer as unusual. The driver did not acknowledge the officer's presence. The Ninth Circuit held that this was not reasonable articulable suspicion. SCOTUS struck that down and affirmed that it was, right? And
Mm.
so there's quite a few case law precedents out there, 10th Circuit case law precedents out there that show that reasonable articulable suspicion, again, is it's an extremely low threshold. So here's the truth, man. Can I have reasonable articulable suspicion that you committed a crime even though you didn't commit a crime? Yeah. Would I have the legal authority to detain you even though you've committed no crime? Yeah. That's going to happen. And so with that being said, we have to realize, and this is the hardest part about, I guess, the middle ground. I do everything in my power because, again, I teach the advanced criminal investigation course for my state. I literally just got back last night. Um, I do everything in my power to utilize my social educational acumen, my lots of years of experience in investigations to not make those decisions, not make those mistakes, if you will, if you want to call it a mistake. But there are times in law enforcement in this job where a cop may have reasonable articulable suspicion, but at the end of the day, after the investigation is done, they're going to find that no crime had been committed. And so the problem is when you yourself, what do you do when you yourself, right? So when Pennsylvania transparency, you're like, I know I haven't committed a crime. I
Yep.
know there's no arrestable offense. I know when they finally do this investigation, they're going to find nothing. But that officer believes he has a reasonable articulable suspicion. What do you do? What do you do when two objects collide? Right. And I think that's the biggest thing that we all have to ask ourselves. And I don't know. That's why I created the template. I sent it to you on Instagram.
I love it. I took a look
That's
at it.
why
So,
that's why I made that template because I realized, like me as a cop, right? If I get stopped by another cop and that cop thinks he has reasonable articulable suspicion, I'm gonna assume that cop is garbage. Like you're just wow, what are you doing, bro?
mhm.
Right? But I also have to realize that if he does have the minimum requirements, the minimum elements of reasonable articulable suspicion, he is allowed to detain me and he is allowed to ID me. So the question is, how do I go about doing that? And so for me, I have three pillars that I look at. I want to go home at night. At the end of the day, my survivability is super important, right? And I
Yep.
got a couple things working against me. Like you probably, I'm always armed. I always carry a weapon. I'm a bigger dude, right? I'm 230 pounds, pretty big guy. Three, I have that era about me. Like you look at me and I'm a very confident person. And you can say that's because I'm a cop or just because that's how I carry myself every day, military, whatever. And so I'm a big bearded man, and I'm not, it's and another cop being around me isn't going to intimidate me, right? So
Yeah.
if you don't know me and you're a cop, you might look at me and be like, "Oh, dude, this is making me
This guy's an
uncomfortable." Because
asshole.
yeah, well, it's not even just that; it's just this guy isn't it, because that
Not easily
intimidation factor. If
intimidated.
you're a
Yeah.
bad cop, right? Like this cop isn't
Yep.
intimidated by. Well, why would I? Right? Like why would
Yeah.
I be intimidated by you? Because if I'm interacting with cops, it's going to be either a deputy or a local police. Like,
Hmm.
why is a state police agent going to be why am I right? I teach the advanced criminal. I teach at the highest levels. Like, why am I going to be afraid of you, bro? I didn't. Number
Yeah.
one, I did nothing wrong, and number two, this is you're being ridiculous. So I realized
So,
that, but I also realized in his mind, if he has reasonable articulable suspicion, and I don't do what he wants me to do, what's he going to do? He's going to use force. And depending on how confident that guy is with force, is going to determine my life. Because that's the problem with force, right? You have too many fat cops out there that are afraid to go hands on. So they go from
mhm,
verbal commands to pepper spray or taser or
immediately.
gun, right?
Yeah.
So
God
verbal
forbid.
commands to intermediate or lethal force, no in between.
Hmm.
And so I'm cognizant of that. If I get that cop that's 30, 40 pounds overweight, 50 pounds overweight, he
He's
looks
not
at
running
me.
after you.
Yeah, not only he's not running after me, he's gonna look at me. He's gonna be like, "This guy's a threat."
Hmm.
And then I
Yep.
realized that we both have guns. One that he can't see, and then I can see his, right? So I understand that all these things are in play. So, I guess my biggest question to you is like in that situation, let's say an
Hmm.
officer does have the minimum statutory requirements for reasonable articulable suspicion. Let's say they have it, but you did nothing wrong. What are you going to do in that situation?
So in that situation, right?
Like I'm telling you
I
right
how
now,
I'm talking to you.
yeah, I'm telling you right now, if it goes to court, the judge will
Mhm.
say, pursuant to this case law and this case law, the officer had the minimum. What would you do?
I mean, if in that situation, right? Let's go back to before the identification process. So, you know, officer's like, all right, let me see your ID. Well, officer, like with due respect, like I did in the video where I had, a Roper, Detective Roper, and I said his name wrong, by the way.
Did
It's
you?
Patrolman Roper. I'm pretty sure they're brothers, but I
Are
can't
they?
confirm that. They look a lot alike.
You can't confirm or
They're
deny,
just two
huh?
different. They're just two different departments.
Gotcha.
And then I
Maybe.
have no, they are two different departments. I've already
Okay.
put that. I've already found that one out. And then I had, Officer Big Man. That's what I nicknamed him because he refused to identify. He's the one that called me an idiot. You had the First Amendment right to be an idiot, which I'm
Cool.
in that situation, right? I would do exactly what I did in that video. What is your reasonable articulable suspicion for asking me for my ID? I'm not saying I will not hand you my identification. I just want to know if you suspect me of committing a crime, what crime do you suspect me of committing? I feel like that's a reasonable question to ask a law enforcement officer.
Sure.
You
And
know,
so yeah,
like,
and here's the interesting thing about it, right? Like there's no and because I get this question a lot. I'm glad we're talking about this. This is super important. The Supreme Court has not put into effect any there's no requirement for a law enforcement officer to explain to you the reasonable articulable suspicion they had at the time to detain you. And that's kind of the thing where I do it because again, if you're coming in contact with me, like honestly, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but if you're
yeah.
coming in contact with me, like I'm gonna spew a bunch of case law on you. Like I have templates for how to get people out of cars. Like I'm gonna start spewing stuff, not because you're gonna understand it, but because I literally want your attorney to go to the district attorney and be like, "Did your cop really read 15 different case laws to this guy from a pre-printed card? Did that actually happen?" Yeah, no, yeah, that's what Mike did. He sure did. And so, if they
But
were,
isn't that the threshold that we should hold cops accountable to? Like,
I
I know you
I
agree with
agree.
me,
I here's
but
the thing.
like
I'm not against it.
that's the threshold.
I'm not against
If
it.
you want to pull me out of my car, I want it like I feel right. It is it should be your right, my right, anyone's right to know at least why we're being arrested.
Sure.
or why we're getting identified. Like if
Well,
you
it
tell me straight up, I'm asking your identification because you stepped on that property. It says no trespassing, and now we need to give you that trespass warning and the notification. Cool, I'm all for it. But if you're just asking me for my identification because you're on a call, that's not acceptable.
so
That's not
here's
acceptable, and
yeah,
you and they shouldn't do that.
no, I agree. And here's the thing though, right? So let's play devil's advocate real quick if you don't mind.
No, go
Um,
ahead.
so for example, reasonable articulable suspicion, right? A few case laws that you may or may not be aware of. So in Illinois versus Wardlow, the officer being in a high crime area, an individual's unprovoked flight, and then that individual being nervous and evasive was enough for a detainment and forcible ID. So if I were to come up to you and be like, hey, so the bank called, as soon as we showed up, you ran away or you left very quickly. This area is a high crime area. And now that I'm around you, you're being super nervous and evasive. Can I get your ID? What would you say? You would
I would
probably say,
probably say to
yeah,
them,
you would probably be
no.
like, hey, man, I'm nervous because you're a cop. I'm this, I'm
Yeah,
that. And what if I
people
said,
with
okay,
guns worry me,
yeah,
especially
perfect.
when
So,
I'm not armed.
yeah, perfect.
Like,
So, yeah, pursuant to Illinois versus Wardlow, 2000, I'm now demanding your ID. You're probably still going to give me lip, right? So in that situation, you're probably not going to, even if I gave you the case law and I cited it for you, that doesn't mean that you're going to respect that case law roadside, nor should you, right? Because this stuff isn't adjudicated in court. And so I say that because here's another one. So I'm just going to read you a few, and this is all stuff I teach. 10th Circuit, United States versus Commas KO. Officers could prolong a stop because their reasonable suspicion was air fresheners, possession of multiple cell phones, driver was overly nervous, inconsistent, vague, implausible travel plans, and then provided contradictory statements. That was enough to hold the driver for an hour until state police
Jesus
could get a
Christ.
car, could get another vehicle. Here's another one, something even crazier. Um, Let me see if I can find it. United States versus Jones, Sixth Circuit case. The appellate found that a trooper had reasonable suspicion to extend a stop based upon the length of time Jordan said he was traveling. He's like, I've been driving for about 14 hours. Jordan's implausible explanation for the travel plans. Jordan's plans to extend his rental car agreement, and Jordan's heavy breathing. So you
You
can
cut out
see.
there. I didn't hear the end
Uh,
of it. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the first one was the length of time Jordan had been traveling,
Yeah.
Jordan's implausible explanation of travel plans, Jordan's plans to extend the rental car agreement, and Jordan's heavy breathing was enough for um, troopers to prolong that stop. So you can see if you're a guy like me and I can take two or three from here, two or three from there, and I just start quoting this to you and I say give me your ID, you're going to say well, that doesn't mean anything. And then you could give me a plausible reason. And then DC versus Heller states that even though you have a plausible reason for my reasonable suspicion, it does not take away my reasonable suspicion or probable cause. And I
Yeah,
know
I
these,
can I can
right?
see that.
So,
Yeah.
you get a guy that's very super versed in case law. You think I'm going to be able? I will every time. I promise you, every time, whether you committed the crime or not, I will be able to get factors of reasonable articulable suspicion, which is a low threshold
Oh yeah. It very
to.
much is.
So the question is, you come roadside, right? Even if I were to give you, which I would, because I'm trying to build a case. So even if you came in contact with a guy like me, brother, you're right. I'll give you the case law. You're not going to know it, or you're not going to
Yeah.
respect it, and then we're still at the same spot we were before. And
Mhm.
so while I like that, here's another thing to think about too. This is the honest part of it. You're not getting so cops make different pay everywhere, but in Oklahoma, like there are many cops that are making 17.50 an hour.
Yeah.
Like
I
how do
was
you
gonna
expect
talk to
the
you about that too. Like
yeah, how do you expect a cop making 17.50 an hour to give you law
100%.
degree level service?
Exactly. And I think like that has a lot to do with it. And I don't want you to take everything that I said is I don't like law enforcement.
No, I don't get that at all. I don't get
I
that at
don't have
all.
any problem with law enforcement whatsoever. You show me respect, I'm gonna be respectful back. And I'm that way with every single person that I've ever met in my entire life because that's the way I was raised. And I think a lot of it has to do with education part of it, right? Like it all stems back to knowing your rights. And if I'm confident I haven't committed a crime, I'll tell you what I'm doing. If I have nothing to hide, I have nothing to hide. But if I feel that, you're just asking me for an identification just because, well, at that point, I think I might, invoke my Fifth Amendment, contact my attorney, let him know what's going on, because reasonable articulable suspicion is not threshold. Like you said many times in this video, like I've said, it's a very low threshold for everything. You know, Personally speaking, I believe that officers should not be able to ask you for your identification if they suspect you for a crime. You know what I mean? Like if someone calls 911 and they're like, hey, like this person just robbed us, right? Obviously, you suspected me of robbing a bank, right? Yeah, you can ID me, obviously, because there's probably footage of, you know, what's going on. Now, granted, people wear masks, right? So it does not show their face, but that's where the common sense or the I don't want to necessarily say common sense because common sense is different for everybody,
100% it
right?
is. And
But
that's why
having
it's
that
so that's
knowledge
yeah, and I'll
of
be
it
honest
is
with you,
different.
brother. That's what it comes down to because I agree. Common sense is not common, and not even that. We share differences in cultural values, we share differences in ethics maybe.
Mm-hmm.
We look at things differently. So, you know, when I tell people how I start every course is because we know Connor v. Graham and we know there's case law that says, and even with qualified immunity, was the officer acting reasonably? Well, what does reasonably mean?
Reasonably is different for
Yeah,
everybody, just like
yeah,
common sense is.
yeah. So
Exactly.
I
Yep.
I argue reasonability. All reasonability means, and I've talked to a lot of lawyers, I've talked to judges, and they all say, well, while we can't define it, if you do it that way, you'll now there's very there's really no way you can be wrong. I take that and I articulate that to reasonability means adherence to the standards. So if I adhere to United States Supreme Court standards and I can pull it out, I can quote it, and I can show it, guess what? Your lawyer's going to have a hard time saying that I acted unreasonably. Well, why did you stop my client? Well, I had reasonable articulable suspicion. What reasonable articulable suspicion? I'm glad you asked. Let's pull up Illinois versus Wardlow. Let's pull up this. Let's pull up that. I had these elements.
Ooh, excuse
Therefore,
me.
I initiated. Therefore, I initiated contact. Your client stated that he did not want to provide me with ID. At that point, I told him that it was required pursuant to Brown v. Texas 1979. Your client therefore stated that I did not have the authority to do that. So, for officer safety purposes, I went ahead and placed him in hand restraints. On that, I asked him again if he had any kind of identification on him. He said he didn't. Well, since he was already detained, Terry v. Ohio became in effect. I conducted a frisk pat down on him. I observed in his back left pocket there was a wallet. At this point in time, he gave me implausible. I had reason to believe he gave me implausible statements because I know that wallets routinely carry identification. He said he didn't have identification, so I know he made contradictory statements to me. At that time, again, I asked him numerous times in sequence, no less than 17, 21, 52 times if he had identification. I explained to him that he was compelled to provide it pursuant to United States Supreme Court case precedents. He said he did not. So at that time, I had probable cause to believe that he was obstructing because I had a lawful reason to get his identity, to see his identity. So then I, at that point, placed him under arrest for obstruction, which gives me the Chamel v. California incident to arrest doctrine. That is when I pulled his wallet out of his pocket, searched his wallet because that's illegal. That would be a legal exemption. I found his ID. I ran his ID. I can continue to conduct further investigations. I found that he was not said person that we were looking for. At that time, I released him, but I'm asking the magistrate and district attorney to still file charges for obstruction because I did have the legal authority to do so, or whatever. Or let's say I didn't.
But
But let's say I
wouldn't
cut you loose. Let's say I cut you loose, right? And then you try to come at me and say, well, he violated my rights. Well, I just showed you in that case that I had reasonable articulable suspicion, which is the Supreme Court case law threshold for getting your identification. So I had it. I gave you all the doctrines for it. I searched you pursuant to incident to arrest, Chamelby, California, for obstruction because I had the legal authority to get it in the first place. So then we're kind of in this situation where it's like, if I have to go to court and you have to defend yourself and I have to defend myself, I feel very confident,
Yeah. But
right?
I would just ask you this one question, and this
Ask me
is,
anything.
from me to you, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
do you believe that obstruction has to be a physical act?
Well, in the state of Oklahoma, we have Supreme Court case precedent. State versus
Mhm.
Trent says it does not have to be a physical. So we have
Interesting.
case law that states it doesn't, and that's good. That's a
Okay.
good one if you want to look up that State
Yeah.
versus Trent. Does it have to be physical? No. It doesn't have to be physical. It can be verbal. It can be it can be many different things. Now, with that being said, I also think it's important that we realize what it is that we're talking about, right? So if I have the legal threshold to get something and you refuse to give it to me, does that mean I can't have it?
Not as no, not at all.
Right. So that's all we're talking about in this case. If I have the legal authority to identify you, there's one of two ways we can do it, right? I can either take
Easy
you
way
to
or the
the
hard way.
I can so I'm just saying what's more if I have to reasonably articulate myself being reasonable, what's more invasive? Me taking you to the police department and running your fingerprints or me placing you into custody and taking your wallet out and getting your ID? Which one's
Me personally, I would hate to have you reaching into my pocket.
sure.
Like, in all honesty, like,
So what's more invasive? Me taking you to jail, having them inventory everything on your person and then running your fingerprints or
it's
me
definitely going to take more time for sure.
but
And
but what's
then
more
I'm definitely
invasive?
in the system.
But
That
what's
one
more
definitely, because
that's more
they might
invasive.
you
So
might be like, oh, we need to conduct a cavity search, blah 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 blah,
and
this that and the other.
you know who this happened to?
I
You know who
don't.
this happened to? So there's a famous serial killer out of Florida. Remember his name? Killed college girls.
I'm, I'm not into real crime, that kind of stuff, so I don't know,
Ted
like
Bundy.
the.
You know how
Oh
Ted
shit!
Bundy
Really?
you know how Ted Bundy
Yeah, I
got
know who
caught?
Ted Bundy is. Wasn't it because of a traffic infraction? Like his
Yeah.
bumper
So the
light was
officer
out.
had reasonable articulable suspicion to believe that he was speeding. He did not want to present his ID. So back then they didn't have the things that we had, so they placed him
Yeah,
under arrest and they ran his fingerprints. Come to find out he was Ted Bundy. Now, if the officer had done something wrong, guess what? That
I would have
whole
been thrown
it
out.
would have
Yeah.
been thrown out. So
So my
again,
question is, right, like,
it's
and
just
not to
reasonable
cut
articulable
you off.
suspicion.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but it also comes down to officer discretion too, right? Like,
100% agree with
if
you.
if I'm being compliant with you, I tell you everything that I've done.
100%.
You're not going to be like, all right, well, I want to see your identification anyway.
No, I agree.
You
All I'm
know,
doing, brother,
if
all
I'm
I'm
there
doing
and
is
I'm like,
playing. Yeah,
oh, you can kiss my booty, like I'm not doing nothing for you. You're nothing but this, that, and the other thing, and I just start being irate and just a complete jerk. Then officer discretion comes into it, where now you're definitely going to ask me for my,
100. Well,
like,
here's the thing.
for me, like,
It's
I'd rather just tell you what I'm doing,
I agree with
because
you.
I believe I'm not breaking the law, and I've made sure that I haven't done things that will get me in trouble. Then you need to be respectful of that, right? Of me telling you what I'm doing, and
I
not to use that
100%.
discretion to not ask me for my ID.
I 100% agree with you. I guess what I'm going back to, I'm not saying this is
Not
what
all
I would
cops are the
do.
same. Yeah.
This is not what I would do. What I'm telling you is playing devil's advocate and saying what can be done, right? So
Yeah.
if you have a robot and that robot has access to every case law known to man here in the United States of America, understands jurisprudence, understands it all, if you're telling me that they're not going to be able to figure out a way to compel you to provide ID when reasonable articulable suspicion threshold has been met, you're not going to take that guy's qualified immunity. You're not going to say
Yep.
that arrest was unlawful, right? And that's all I'm trying. And that's the only thing that I want to um, explain to auditors, because there's a lot of auditors that get arrested. More so than not, the auditors that get arrested, they don't. We only see the ones on YouTube that are successful. The ones that aren't successful,
Yeah.
they don't post their stuff on YouTube and look at, oh, look at, I lost in court. And so that's kind of the biggest thing just on the other side. I agree. I am somebody that has the ability, like to me it's petty, right? Like if you're on a public right of way, right, and you're recording into banks or whatever, if you're doing everything constitutionally, I'm literally just gonna go tell that guy, like I'm gonna go tell the other party, like, hey, guess what? This person's doing X, Y, and Z. It's lawful. It's lawful activity. A lot of times they're just doing it because they're wanting to flex their rights. This is ideological. Okay, like it or not, it's
That's the way it should
ideological.
be.
It's ideological, but what I will do is if you are not feeling safe, I will document that you're not feeling safe. I will document your feelings, but I'm not taking enforcement action against this person. And if you feel that bad, we will, if I can stay here or have an officer stay here for whatever, but if there's a call that comes out, like I will do everything to give people's because you're right, we're not feeling police, but here's another thing to think about too, and this is something that I think is important. We're not feeling police. So I'm not going to, what I mean that to say is, I'm not going to take enforcement on your feelings, right? But I
Yep.
still want you to feel safe, right? So you can
Of
say, hey,
course.
I see a white man with pretty blue eyes and a mask and he scares me, right? Okay, cool. But what about that? What about that 19-year-old girl that just graduated high school that's closing the subway at 1 o'clock in the morning and she's afraid to walk to her car? Is that unreasonable for me to go and care about her feelings and make sure she gets to her car okay? Right? So feelings matter to that person. That doesn't mean that I have to take enforcement action, but
Correct.
if a citizen wants an assist and I can provide it, that's just good community policing, right? So
Yeah, and that's
it's
that's
two
you
it's
protecting and serving
twofold.
your community.
Right. But I
I'm
don't
all for
believe,
it.
yeah, but am I going to mess with you? Am I going to mess with you over that? I'm not. I'm not going to mess with
You're
you over
not.
that. Where we start to run into when we start to run into areas is where you start having an activist that is starting to act outside of the confines of the law, or there's reasonable articulable suspicion without full context, right? If you are at night, and let's say you were on somebody's property for some reason, or let's say something happened, or whatever, right? Um, yeah, that could be a situation that arises where, okay, here we are with something, right? If the officer has a reasonable articulable suspicion, yeah, he can absolutely detain. But most activists I know are not doing First Amendment activism at 2 o'clock in the morning either, right?
Heck
Most
no, I'm
most
sleeping.
you guys are doing this in broad daylight, right? Even
Yep.
if you are wearing a mask, you're doing
Yeah.
it in broad daylight, X, Y, and Z. And here's another thing too. I don't see too many First Amendment activists in downtown Chicago, Detroit, um, for obvious reasons. Like I think you're an awesome guy, but I don't think that you would go to downtown Philly in the hood, and start doing First Amendment activism in front of a
Why
Seven
not?
Eleven because I think that most people
They might think
realize.
I'm a narc and be
Well,
like,
no,
"Oh,
I,
you're
I
gonna
just
go
think
tell the
I
cops."
I think you realize, we hate people hate the cops, but these are the same people that also know that um, there's certain neighborhoods that you just don't go into and start acting up, even if
Oh
you're
yeah.
constitutionally right, right? It's
I
just a
mean,
it's a job. When it really comes down to it, it's just a risk over reward. And so I'm sure if you were to go to, I'm sure because I've been to Selinsgrove, because isn't the Yingling factory there in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania?
yeah, there's also one in
Right.
Pottsville.
I would say those are pretty nice neighborhoods where you could probably do
Yeah.
that. But if you were to go to downtown Philly, I'm sure there's certain neighborhoods there where you probably wouldn't start recording the 7-Eleven down the street where,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
my counter argument to that is too, right? Like speaking, right? I'm not going to a 7-Eleven. I'm not going to a Rite Aid. I have before only because they were right next to somewhere I was recording at. But like,
I think
I
I think
personally wouldn't be going to those places to record because it's not holding my government accountable. Like that's what it's about. It's about holding the government accountable, right? So like at the same time, yes, am I filming a bank? Yeah, absolutely. Um, because they are, in my opinion, in cahoots with the federal government. They are in cahoots with the federal government. Every bank since the bank bailout is working with the federal government, right? Like
sure.
they're all monitored by the SEC and all that stuff. So like, is it a little bit of a pain in the neck to like people have be recorded at a bank? Yes, but at the same time, like I will walk down the street in my neck of the woods with my camera out to record whatever. But like you said, there are certain neighborhoods where I'm not going to go record. Absolutely. But not because I'm afraid of what people will say. It's more of
I
how
would say it's
people
no, it's
what people will
safety.
do.
I think no,
Absolutely.
that's what I'm
Like
saying.
if you see
There's
a
a,
random dude
that's
and
what I
you're a dealer,
hundred
I'm not gonna go film you. Like that's just stupid. Like
100%. And
that's
that's
where
what
the
I'm
common
saying. Like
sense lies.
when you look at these, and that's something because I've had conversations with a lot of people, and from the law, I've heard many cops and other people that that's one of the what's it called? That's one of the comebacks, right? One of the comebacks is,
Yeah,
well, they're only doing this in nice affluent areas because they know the cops aren't going to kill him. The worst thing is the cops going to arrest him, but he goes to this neighborhood and goes to this credit union. Chances are somebody from the community is just gonna curb stomp them. And it's like, well, yeah, that's pretty true. There are certain neighborhoods that you just shouldn't, even if you're doing something completely legal for safety
yeah,
reasons, like you probably just shouldn't be going there because there's a different culture there. And so, I just think that it's okay to admit that and also admit the fact that this education still needs to happen regardless. So
absolutely.
I don't use that as a sting, right?
Yeah,
I believe in just transparency and truth, and ultimately, right? And let's be honest, the truth is the cops in the hood don't really care about your First Amendment auditing in that hood because there's other priorities going on.
exactly. There's other things that they need to be worrying about. Exactly. Like
So
now,
you're probably what I'm saying is you could probably go. There's certain parts of Pennsylvania that I'm sure you could go to, do the same thing you did in a ritzy neighborhood, and the cops won't even show up because they're 5-7 calls down. And
oh yeah, I
realistically,
mean,
you won't
shoot,
be there
man.
very long
You said
anybody anyway.
Philadelphia. You said Philly. Like there are there for a long time, and I know this because I lived in Philly for a while. There are places in Philadelphia that even cops don't go into. Like straight up. Like
Yeah,
that's not even the bold-faced lie. Like Southeast Philadelphia is one of those places that don't go unless they're called to go there.
yeah,
And when they do go, they got like they're rolling deep, like 6, 10 vehicles. Like now, if I am in Philadelphia, right, or even in Wilkes-Barre, there's some sketchy areas, right? Would I be recording with a face mask on? No,
probably not.
I'm not. Definitely not. And like I'm gonna be saying to the guys like, hey guys, I'm just walking through, don't mind my camera is not even recording you. If you want to come take a look, I'll face the camera in a different way and you can take
I
a look
just
at what I've recorded.
I
You know
just
what I mean?
imagine there's
Like,
a lot of places in North Philly that I'm sure most people
oh
just
yeah,
wouldn't
North
do any
Philly,
activism in.
Southeast Philly, like there
'Cause
there and
isn't Gilly
there's a
the
reason
kid
for
from
it too.
Philly? Gilly the
Billy the
kid?
Kid?
Yeah.
Gilly the Kid.
Yeah, Gilly the
Gilly or
kid.
Billy? I don't know who
Gilly,
that is.
Gillie, Gilly the kid. He has
I'm
that
not
song
sure.
Young Bull. I'm pretty sure he's like one of the OGs from North Philly. Um
Oh,
he's like
Gilly the Kid. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Um
Yeah, he's from Philly. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
I just
looking at him
imagine
right now.
because
Yeah.
I just yeah, and again, I totally get that. That's a totally fair assessment. But
Yeah.
ultimately, that's and again, just again, I want you to know that's not how I do policing, but I understand the work of a patrol officer and I understand what it is they're trying to do. And I think that while activists want cops to be better trained, I think that if you were to
Hmm.
put my mind into a patrol officer that is 100% out there hunting for dope, human trafficking, guns, all this other stuff, I think if you gave them the constitutional mind and you basically were able to put a law degree in these people, I think that, activists would not be happy with that, especially if they were losing in court over doctrinal judicial review, right? I think they would probably be not too happy with that because again, the officer's discretion is really large. It's just
Hmm.
are they able to articulate that discretion? And I will be honest with you, most cops cannot. And so I think that's why it's so easy to be like, hey, this cop's stupid. Whereas if I were to do something like that, cool, let's go to court. I'm ready to explain it from point A to point B. But most cops, I don't think they can explain reasonable articulable suspicion, nor do I think they could give you case laws that support how it's affirmed. And so I think that's kind of, I think that's kind of a thing. That's why, again, that's why I created that template, because if I was to be put in a situation where I was detained, I want to defend, I want to protect my rights too. So how would I do it? Well, that's the template I created, because at the end of the day, I want to keep myself from the obstruction charge while holding maximum accountability, right? So, especially for those of us that are military law enforcement trained, it's very easy for me to articulate. I'm going to tell the officer where my wallet is. I'm going to tell him where my ID is. I'm going to be honest with it, but I'm not going to grab it for him.
Yep.
If
Hey,
he wants to go in my pocket and he wants to violate my rights, he better have reasonable suspicion. But
damn right.
I can articulate on camera, and I can articulate in a courtroom. It is not safe for me to put my hands in my pockets
Hell no.
to take this out. So,
Because they're going to
officer,
take that as a
if you
threat
want
and
to violate
probably
my
and possibly
rights,
shoot you, you know?
yeah, if you want to violate my rights, go ahead. My wallet's in my back left, back right pocket. If you
Hmm.
want to violate my rights, that's fine. But pursuant to USA v. Jones, I do not consent to searches of my person.
Yep.
And that's how I would handle it. But there are auditors out there that would just fight tooth and nail and just, I'm not doing it. You don't have cause. I kind of back that up. Let me ask you a question real quick. Are you a believer, if
Yeah.
you were to get stopped by law enforcement, are you a believer in asking for a supervisor or not? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Hell yeah. Dude, I if I have an unreasonable cop
Hmm.
who is asking me for my ID for whatever reason, and I ask them, okay, I know you don't need to tell me, but what's your
Ask
RAS
for it. Yeah,
for
ask for it.
asking for my ID? And they don't have one. I'm going to be like, all right, I'm not going anywhere, but I request the supervisor come here and explain to me why I'm detained, and B, what the articulable suspicion is for my detainment. And then after that, I'm not answering any questions. I'm pleading the fifth until I get a supervisor. And from my experience, every police department that I've dealt with has had no issue calling for a supervisor. I've been very fortunate in that aspect.
Hmm.
There have been instances that I've seen, online and stuff like that, where people are like, well, let me see a supervisor. Oh, there's no one on duty. So you're the highest ranking person in the whole department on duty right now. Yeah, I don't believe you. Please, like, wake up your chief, wake up the lieutenant, wake up the sergeant, have them come here to explain to me everything that's going on. And I felt, personally speaking, like I've referenced that video of the bank at 44 because it's one where it's the first time for me, like I've had a cop tell me, well, give me your ID. And it de-escalated to the point because I was cordial with the police officers
Hmm.
up until I was called an idiot. Um,
Yeah.
I was reasonable with them and in telling them everything that was going on, that I didn't need to call for a supervisor. But I can tell you that if I had requested a supervisor, that chief, because of his actions in the police station, would have been a complete waste of time anyway. And for me, like I have absolutely no problem calling the supervisor. Absolutely no problem with it whatsoever.
So,
Because the
yeah.
supervisor will hopefully be more educated than that patrolman. And that supervisor will hopefully be on the side of an educated common sense. I don't want to say common sense because, like we've said, common sense isn't common. We said it couple times, but like having that further education, and we've both seen terrible supervisors. You know what I mean?
Right. So here's
But
my question.
that's the thing. Like
Are
I
you,
don't have a problem with it.
yeah, are you a believer in the thin blue line? Do you think that's a real thing?
I think that brothers before others does happen. Um, do I think it's right? No.
Do you
Do
think
I
it's common?
understand it?
Do
Absolutely.
you think it's common in law enforcement?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Because I
I
say
know.
yes
I
because
think
I've seen it, but no
right.
because I've also seen it not be common.
Right.
Just like you, like you're one of those officers where if one of your guys was doing the wrong thing, I have full I'm under the impression that you will be like, listen, dude, you might pull them aside and be like, listen, you're not doing this the right way. This is how you should go about it. I
I'm a
believe that
yeah
you're going to
from
take the law over having lying for another officer or having or trying to help them cover something up. I don't believe that you would do that. I don't because
I'm
you've
a
been nothing
big
but transparent with me. And you're a
right.
big component of the law. That's why you have a law degree. But I would say that the blue line does exist, absolutely, and it has taken huge. It's grown a lot over the last 20 years, and I think that because we're both military, like that bond that does go a long way, and it does sometimes persuade people whether they agree with what's going on or not. It does persuade them to take that person's side because they know them and they have that bond of, well, we're both sworn to defend the Constitution, but I know you outside of here. I don't think you would do the wrong thing intentionally. And I think that's where cops are mistrayed, but are misled anyway. But long answer short, I do believe that the blue line does exist. Is it with every officer? No, it's not. But it is with a lot of them for sure.
I will say that's probably the best so far I've heard it because when people say so, I'll just say it right off the bat. I'm not asking for a supervisor at all. Wouldn't do it. Now I have biases there, but your answer, what I love about your answer is you're genuine and you are 100%. Like so far, I mean, you've been solid on the fact that you were not a hypocrite, right? Like everything that you say is backed by the other thought, right? So you don't you never contradict yourself. So I think that's great about you.
Thank you.
Um, I mean, it's true. You don't, not yet anyway. No, but it's good. I mean, you
Integrity.
no, yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's one of those things where the reason why I'm skeptical to talk to have a supervisor is because I agree with your sentiment. I don't think that there's this thin blue line cabal. I think that there are people that are friendly with each other, right? And there's relationships and bonds that are formed. But cops are some of the biggest eater of other cops, right? So this idea that cops don't screw cops over is ridiculous. They absolutely do. I'll say that. The reason why I am apprehensive, because people ask me this, should I ask for a supervisor? I think you did a good job of explaining why it could be useful. And I think by and large, I think a lot of times supervisors, you know, they should de-escalate situations. The reason
Hmm.
why I'm not a fan of that is again from a case law perspective, because if I'm unlawfully detained and I ask for a supervisor, I am voluntarily extending my stop. So
Yep.
something,
I don't want a cop to be there longer than they have to be, but at the
but
same
you've
time, like
already,
if you're
but what,
willingly being an ass, I'm gonna request a
right?
supervisor.
But so this is so I just want you to take this in consideration. I have heard of this
Yeah.
happening before, where a cop will stop a vehicle, do his thing, and then hey, well, so you're unhappy with this. Do you want it? Do you want me to get my supervisor out here? I'll get my. Why do you think he's doing that? Dog.
Prolong the stop to try to find something
Yeah.
to get out there to
So the
bring his
question
dog.
is,
I mean,
law enforcement is not allowed to prolong their own
reason
stop, correct?
they extend it.
Illinois versus
Yeah.
Rodriguez says we
The
can't
Supreme
prolong the
Court,
stop,
yeah, 15 minutes.
but
Yep.
can the driver prolong their own stop?
Absolutely. If
So
you I mean, so
if
like
you
on
are
a traffic
requesting
stop,
law
right?
enforcement,
I'm not requesting it.
well, I'm just saying, well, if you're
That's me.
requesting, well, if you're requesting a supervisor roadside,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Let me get my supervisor. You want me? He can get a complaint form too. Would you like him to bring a complaint form? Okay. Well, we'll get that to you. I'm sorry. All they're doing is prolonging their stop. You are prolonging your
Hmm.
own stop, and the next thing you know, a
Yeah.
dog shows up. Or even if you want to have if you're trying to say your rights were violated, the biggest thing is going to be like they prolonged a stop. Okay, well, no, actually, I didn't prolong the stop. He requested a super. So he requested, yeah, he said, I want to speak to your supervisor. I quote, there is no way you're the highest ranking person here. End quote. So yeah, I think that is something to be aware of. But if it's worked for you, keep working it. It's just from me, from the law enforcement side, I'll be honest with you, I am not asking for a supervisor. I'm going to make them take that arrest decision right then and there. Because number one,
Yeah, that
I'm
no, that
not
makes
obstruct.
sense too. That makes
I'm not
sense.
obstructing them. I told them where my wallet is for safety
Yep.
concerns. I'm not putting my hands in my pocket, and I can explain that. Well, why didn't you put your hands in your pockets? Because if this person thought that I was such a risk that I needed to be detained, then I'm not putting it is unsafe for me. And I teach defensive tactics. I know as an instructor, there's no reason for me to be putting my hands in my pockets, especially when I'm armed at all times.
Yeah,
That's a no go. So I told him if he wanted to get it, he could violate my rights and get it. Well, why did you say that? Because I don't believe that he had reasonable articulable suspicion to stop me in the first place. And so if he doesn't have reasonable articulable suspicion to stop me, that's a violation of my rights. If he puts his hands in my pockets and takes my ID out of my wallet without having the justification, that is a violation of my rights. And then three, I am not
yep,
obstructing him in the violation of my rights. There's nothing I'm doing to obstruct him
exactly.
whatsoever. So you can't charge me with obstruction because I'm not obstructing. Now, am I not obeying his commands? Well, no, but is it a lawful command for me to take my ID out of my pocket when I know that there's the totality of circumstances? I think I can get on the stand and say the totality of circumstances are I have a pistol in my waistband. I'm a certified instructor. Yeah, no, I'm not putting my hands anywhere near my waistband. I'm sorry, that's reasonable. Anybody would say that's
Exactly.
reasonable. I'm putting myself
Well,
in a
you would
position.
hope anyway.
Yeah, why'd you put yourself in this position? I'm putting myself in a position that is nationally known and taught by federal law enforcement as the safest way to deal with a suspect. This is a high risk stop.
Mhm.
This is the safest position for a suspect to be in when interacting with law enforcement, and I willingly gave it to him. I acted reasonably. And so
Yeah,
I
no,
I
that makes
play,
complete sense. You
yeah,
know,
I
that
play
makes
for the
complete
long
sense.
game there. So, but that's why I love
Yeah,
talking. That's why I love talking to other people because I just kind of want to see how other people are going about this. Let's talk about ICE.
yeah. So I believe in immigrant in immigration enforcement. Wow, that was hard for me to say for some reason,
Do
but
you really believe in it though?
I do. I believe that if someone wants to come to this country, they should do it the lawful way.
Okay,
The caveat to that, there has to be a point where going into people's homes without judicial warrants, with conducting traffic stops in areas where, as ICE in general, right, they don't have the authority to conduct traffic stops, from my understanding, but they are, and that is not their primary focus, right? Their primary focus is to remove people who are not here legally and to protect the border from drugs and firearms and alcohol illegally coming over the border. I'm all for that, but there is a way to go about it. And with the direction of the last year and present, and I'm going to backtrack here for a minute, right? So during the Obama administration, he deported the most people in American history.
100%.
Were there protests about it?
No.
Absolutely. There were protests about the removal of people here undocumented,
When you
right?
say protest, like what do you mean by what? Like how would you caveat that? I would say most of Obama's protests were from his gun stances. Like I mean, when you're talking about protests, I think that were there people that I think only thing from his immigration policy that I've seen is his town halls. People would heckle him over it,
Yeah,
but I never saw people.
that's a form of protest, though.
I
I
get it,
mean,
sure,
in a way, addressing your government. Well, we'll place it that way as per the First Amendment, right?
sure,
You have the right to address all your grievances with your government. That is people protesting in a way where they're saying, "I don't like the way that you're doing this."
100%. Yeah,
He
gotcha.
absolutely had those during his administration.
Hmm.
There is a way to go about enforcing immigration law. The way that we're currently doing it, I do not believe in. Breaking into people's houses, conducting traffic stops, arresting people, using children as bait. That's that's not something I can get behind. And I'm not calling for the dismantling of DHS or ICE as a whole, but I do believe that the way that ICE is currently going about things is completely incorrect. And it scares the hell out of me. You know, I have, and I'll get a little personal here. I won't get too far into too much, to try to keep my identity
No,
as
you're fine. Yeah.
little as possible out there for
People
my
will come
own,
get you, bro.
exactly, for my own protection. But like my my girlfriend is a naturalized United States citizen.
Bless her.
Her whole family is here legally, all naturalized citizens, or they have their green card and work permission to be here. They have taken the steps to be here legally. Can't ask for more than that. They chose to come to this country. They did it the right way. I fear every single day that my girlfriend is not with me, that she's going to get stopped. She's going to be held in an ICE facility. That her sister or her brother or her mom, any one of them is going to get stopped and detained until they find out, oh, they're here legally. But we've seen that has not even stopped them from deporting people. We've seen it. And it's one of those things where we need to have that line of, all right, this person, we believe that they're not here legally. You always do your homework. They also need to do their homework. They need to find out if that person is there legally or not. And the fact that that SCOTUS has said that you can stop and ID someone because they are a different ethnicity than the majority of the United States is at the moment. What the hell are we doing?
Isn't that wild?
What
The
what what the
Gnome
hell
versus
are we doing?
Velasquez. Isn't that
That
crazy?
when I heard that, my jaw hit the floor. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" We went from we went from you cannot discriminate against anyone for race, creed, nationality, gender, religious purposes, or religious reasons. You can't discriminate against them for any of this to, oh, now we can stop and ask you for your identification to see if you're a US citizen simply because you're not white. And I hate to put it that way, but that's basically what the Supreme Court told us.
Yeah. And
And
the Gnome versus
that's
Velasquez.
messed
Yeah.
up. That's messed up.
It's crazy.
It should not be that way. There's a way to go about immigration enforcement
Let me ask you two.
without violating people's rights.
Let me ask you two questions. One as a
Yeah.
veteran, and then one as a. So I have a very unpopular opinion. Um, I just want to get your opinion on it. It hurt. It does. I'm just going to be honest. It hurts me when I see honorably served military service members being deported. Right? If you serve this country, um, I think that you should have. I would love to see something put in place where because there's a lot. I'm sure you knew a lot of a lot of people that were not U.S. citizens that joined the U.S. Armed Services because they wanted to serve and they wanted to be a part of this country. And there's nothing that says
Yep.
like I can't imagine joining another country's military and serving. I just can't imagine doing that because you know I'm
Never
proud to
would.
be an American. Like that would take a lot, right? The amount of what that
Mm-hmm.
would take. And so I look at this and the INA 329, they have a policy in effect now that says they can grant citizenship if somebody serves 1 day during a service of hostility. So technically, everybody in the military right now is in the military during a time of hostility, and if they just serve 1 day, they can get citizenship. So I would love to see something.
As it should be.
I would love to see something where they say, "Hey, if you want to be a U.S. citizen, you automatically carte blanche. If you do 6 years of military service and you're honorably discharged, you will get a DD 214 and you will get your naturalization green card, permanent residency. It comes with your DD 214, and you do 6 years honorable service, and then you have to forego any bonuses, right? Just to make
Yeah.
just to make the MAGA people happy, if you will. And I'm saying MAGA just
Yeah, no, no, I
as
know what you mean.
broad. I'm just being broad, okay? So MAGA people don't come after me, but just a broad, just like a broad brush, term there. Would that be something that you would support? Would you be behind something like that? I just think it should be automatic, in my opinion.
So my whole thing is, okay, I've served with many people who are not US
You're
citizens,
right. I think we all have, yeah.
right? My sister-in-law or future sister-in-law is current active duty right now. She joined when she was not a US citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She had her work permit, she had her visa to be here, all that stuff, but she was not a US citizen. And this goes back to my train of thought like 15 years ago when I was first joining the military. You know, why why are these people take that as, like, and I don't mean that in an offensive way. Okay.
Didn't take it that way.
Why are people joining the military and not getting their US citizen? You are putting your butt on the line for a country that you have no reason for. You should automatically get that US citizenship as soon as you are done with your enlistment if you get out. Not other than honorably, not dishonorably, that doesn't count. Okay. It always boggled my mind that people did not have their citizenship after completing military service.
Yeah,
So I believe that they should 100% get their citizenship after serving, if honorably discharged. I completely 100% agree with that because, like I said, they're putting their butt on the line for people they don't like, just like you and I did, right? We
mm-hmm.
put our butts on the line every single day for people we didn't know, people we will probably never know, for the purpose of the sense of duty, the calling of duty. And I believe that, yeah, they should 100% get their not only residency or green cards, they should get full citizenship.
I agree.
They should, absolutely. And even if they did get a bonus, like, why are you? And I'm not saying you as in
No,
you. I just
I,
mean
I, I
as a
just,
whole, right?
I just realized as a way to, because there's going to have to be appeasement,
Incentivize,
like
yeah.
you have give and take, and so, I think that's what I'm trying to say is I think that's completely reasonable. I don't see who we already let them serve. I don't
Yep.
see why somebody who has served, because think about it, they're eligible for VA disability benefits, right? So why
Yeah.
would we not just give them, if we give them a DD 214 and give them disability benefits, and we have an INA 329 that already states this is permissible. I don't know why we just don't do it, in my honest opinion. My next question
Yeah.
for you, um, but you'd be surprised how controversial that is to the far right. Um,
I don't get it. I
yeah,
mean, everything is controversial to the far right and to the far
far
left, for
left,
that
yeah.
matter. I mean,
It's
there's two
wild.
sides to the coin.
Yeah, it's wild to me. Um, so how do you think we should go about enforcement of immigration enforcement? Because I personally, and this is the reason why that cop banned me. Chai Lung versus Freeman, 1876 states that that the federal government has the right to set powers for surrounding immigration enforcement and foreign relations. Cool. SCOTUS affirmed it. I just don't. You're right. The tactics that ICE is using is not best modern day practices. And I
Correct.
can give you lots of examples for that. For example, does ICE agents, special agents, they have full federal law enforcement powers. So can they conduct
Mhm.
traffic stops? They absolutely can. The problem is modern day best practice, right? I'm sure I don't know if you've ever been pulled over before, but as a cop, what normally is
Oh
supposed to
yeah.
happen, right? A cop gets behind you, they find a violation of the law, a lawful violation pursuant to accordance with United States v. Cortez. They initiate their lights, they initiate a traffic stop, they come forward, they explain to you the reason for the stop, and then they go about the process. What ICE is doing is they're using rental cars with no lights and they're blocking people in. They're not
Yep.
wearing any kind of, they're not wearing any kind of law enforcement credentials that are visibly noticeable, and then they're shooting at people while they drive away.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like
How am I
I
supposed to know you're not trying to kidnap me?
it's a
Like,
hundred. It's here's the thing.
it's
I do a
insane.
lot of yeah. I don't wear a uniform, right? I do a lot of plain clothes operations, that kind of thing. My state vehicle is unmarked. It has lights and everything. But I realize if I conduct a traffic stop and I'm wearing plain clothes and I have an unmarked car, I am not going to be at all upset when somebody's confused, right? How could I? How could
Yeah.
I, in good faith, um, make somebody, have somebody be upset with me over that or confused over that. And so I think when we're looking at best practices, it's so hard for local law enforcement organizations to cross the line there and work with federal agencies when their policies are just incompatible, right? I believe in traffic stops,
Hmm.
but I can't get behind boxing people in with a rental car that you rented from fucking Avis, right? I can't articulate
Yeah.
that as being a good thing to do. Is that fair? I can't
No,
articulate
I agree completely.
I can't articulate that that there's because the case law is the opposite. In order for you, for example, they're trying to use what's called Peyton v. New York. Write that one down. It's a good one. Peyton v. New York basically states that if you have a arrest warrant, you can go into that arrestee's private residence. But the problem is you have to have a judicial warrant to do that. A judicial warrant
Yep.
the reason why it's okay to do that with a judicial warrant is because a judicial warrant is from a neutral and detached magistrate, and that says it straight there in case law. Neutral and detached. You can't say that these Form 205s or whatever they're using are from a detached, neutral uh, judge.
Because they're administrative warrants,
Well, even so,
right?
there is examples. There's one example out of I believe is out of Ohio of a administrative warrant being used, but you know what it was used for, right? It was the magistrate was neutral and detached, and it was for an inmate that escaped from a state penitentiary. So his requirements for his Fourth Amendment is already reduced because he's
Hmm.
technically a ward of the state, and it was not signed off by that institution because that wouldn't be neutral and detached. It was signed off by a state a state appointed administrator of the governor who was detached. So this guy is detached
Yeah.
from the institution in which he escaped from. And that's the only case where I can see that was affirmed, but that was the only reason I can see that. So what I'm saying is
But
these
ICE isn't
ICE
doing
warrants,
that yet.
yeah, you
Exactly. They're
can't
not. They're
articulate
not
that
doing
these
that at
ICE.
all. Yeah.
Well, and here's another thing too, right? This is going to sound crazy. I kick in doors regularly with warrants, right? I regularly go
Hmm.
into businesses and whatever, and I do warrants all the time. I teach warrant writing, Title 18, the whole nine yards. Here's the thing, man. Um, if you have probable cause for an administrative warrant, my question is, why is it so difficult to go? So you've used Microsoft Word, right?
Hmm.
They have this something called copy paste feature, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's crazy. You could copy and paste it into a judicial affidavit and then get it signed. It's really weird, bro, because it's this thing on the computer you can do. It's you control C it and then you control V it and then you control P and you print. It's wild. And so if
Would,
you have
would it take you an
probable
extra
cause,
like 30 seconds?
yeah. No, I'm not joking. You
Valuable
think I'm
time right
joking.
there.
You think I'm joking. It's that easy.
No,
I'm
dude,
not
I
even
know you're
joking.
serious. I
No,
know.
I'm 100% serious.
I have no doubt that it is. I
And
have no
so
doubt that it's that easy.
if you have probable cause, why not just get it done judicially and just start rounding people up? I can't, again, these are things that nobody's able to explain to me in an articulable fashion. And this cop, that's why he blocked me because I went down the things of things are like, well, why is this reasonable? how can you defend this? And he just got tired and he blocked me. That video's out if you want to take a look at it. It's kind of funny, but
I'll take a look. Yeah.
yeah, it's just again, ICE has absolutely the right to do what they're doing. My only question is, why are we not utilizing best police practices, right? I'm sure you saw the video. If you raise your voice, I'll take your voice or whatever. I'll
Yeah.
erase your voice. Like you have a federal agent threatening to kill a U.S. citizen for yelling. How are we even allowing that, right?
I
And
mean, we could
that's
go
what's
down that rabbit hole,
well,
but
I
I don't
get it.
want to turn too many people off
Yeah,
of the video,
no,
you know?
you get it, but you see what I mean. So they
Yeah.
absolutely have the right to do it. It's just I don't think it's unreasonable for you or me or anybody else just ask, hey, if you're going to do this policing thing, can you just adhere to United States Supreme Court? Can you do that? That's all we're asking, right? Is to adhere to the minimum
There's a
standards.
reason why every federal agency, every local agency, all military branches, all shoot, man, even as non-federal or local like law in general, like when you work in retail or any of that kind of stuff, right? What do they all have? They all have standard operating
Yeah,
procedures,
best
right?
best practices.
Standard
Yeah,
operating procedures, best practices.
yeah,
ICE is not following that. Period.
100%
Period.
agree. 100%
And
agree.
whether or not like you agree with how ICE is doing things, SOPs are SOPs for a reason. Like there's steps to everything that they have to do because those steps have been proven to work time and time again and are nine times out of 10 backed by what? Case law,
Yeah,
right? They're following the law of the land. But my biggest issue with all of it, with what's going on, is you are violating people's Fifth Amendment rights. You're violating people's Fourth Amendment rights. And there's the Constitution that and all but I believe three amendments say absolutely nothing about citizens, right? The only amendments that talk about citizens are who can run for president, right? Only natural born American citizens can run for president, and who can vote. That's it. Fourth Amendment doesn't say, oh, you have the right to you have a right to unreasonable search and seizure, but only if you're a U.S. citizen. You have the right to freedom of speech, but only as a U.S. citizen. Those are not what that's not what any of the amendments state, except for ones where it's talking about elections and who can run for president. That's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So
I think a lot of this stuff
people
too
still
is,
have rights.
yeah. I think that again. I think that this is a twofold problem. I think number one, I think prior administrations had let too many people come in the first place illegally that shouldn't have come in, right? I
Yep.
can't sit here and say we had a real strong border security in the past, and that goes for both Republican and Democrat presidents.
Exactly. I was going to say it's
Let
not
me
just a
yeah,
Democrat problem. It's not just a
let me
Republican problem. It's both.
it's a
We
homeland
have
security
failed
problem for sure.
exactly. It's a homeland security problem.
And so
Whoever's
I
in
can
charge, it's a homeland security problem. Absolutely.
100%. So I can admit that this is a knee jerk reaction to a large issue that we have. However, with that being said, um, the reason, and I'll push back on the Obama thing. You're right. Obama deported more deporter in chief for sure, but the reason
Mhm.
why his was less controversial is because he utilized his resources, in my opinion. And again, the MAGA crowd is going to be upset with me. We can do this in a way that is not, seen as we're on the streets surging, surging eight special agents to the streets and stopping everybody that looks like me, right? There's a better
Yep.
way to do it. And
Absolutely.
there's many ways that we can do it. And if we were to work with our local partners, right, and we were to change things, It would change everything, right? Like if you made it judicial, right? Congress could change. You could do administrative rules to change it and be like, hey, this is now judicial. And so if a law enforcement officer comes in contact, change the administrative warrant to a judicial warrant, and they have to hold, they have to hold them in the jail. They have to cooperate, right? So why not make it to where we are working with our local and state agencies to the best level, because the state agency can say, well, we can't do anything with administrative warrants. Okay, take that argument off the table, right? We can do this in a way where we're not, again, sending ICE agents to U.S. citizens' homes and then banging on the door, demanding people come out, right? Like there are ways to do it. And I will say, you know, and when they do it, like I've seen so many examples where these agents go into people's houses and people recording them and yelling at them, and it's just wild because the last time I did a warrant, not too long ago, went into a business, right? Illegal bar, bunch of different stuff going on. We found AKs, drugs, all sorts of stuff. Anyway, I say this all to say, when we executed that warrant, guess how many people were recording us and yelling at us while we were in there?
Everyone.
Nobody, because they were all placed in handcuffs because it was a judicial warrant, right? This is a
But you
this
did
is a
your homework.
judicial felony warrant. When I go in, we're going in with
Yeah.
rifles and guns, and everybody's getting detained, right? Nobody's free to walk
Yeah.
around, and trust me, we made plenty of copies for everybody, and they all went with them to the jail.
Good, as
You
it
know,
should be.
that's what I'm saying. Like I look at these practices, and I'm like, okay, hold on. You say you have a warrant, but these people are freely walking around in your house. What are you doing? Because that's the thing. But I think it's because they don't have the training experience and they don't have a real judicial warrant, right? Because if I have a real judicial warrant,
That kind that
I own the residence.
that pulls back to, but you see, like, that goes down to it, right? Like, they don't have the training. Like, how many times have we heard, right? And you can look it up. Um, anyone can look it up, right? How right now, how long is ICE's training for new recruits?
Well, I think it's down to 42 days.
Yeah, 42 days.
Isn't that wild?
42 days, man.
You
You
can't
and
teach
I,
you can't
right?
teach police. Yeah, you can't teach somebody to be a cop. You can't teach somebody to be a federal agent in 42 days.
You can't teach most people how to do anything in 42 days.
Yeah,
It
it's
takes you
wild.
longer to comprehend things than 42 days.
It's
Like,
scary.
you and I went to boot camp for 9.5 weeks.
Yeah.
And guess what? After boot camp, you're still not done learning how to be
It
a soldier, a Marine, an airman,
it literally
a seaman, and
I think it took
a
me
Space Force Guardian or whatever the hell they're called.
I think it took me 22 months from the time I left for boot camp to the time I got my wings where I could fly solo. It took me 2 years. 2 years of training. And
Yeah,
I was the lowest guy on the search and rescue total. So when I got my wings of gold, it took 2 years of nonstop training.
yeah.
Nonstop. And I was the lowest person on the threshold. These guys, 42 days, here's a bunch, get
It's a
badge,
joke.
gun, body armor, go
And
enforce
like
law. It's wild.
like the part of the problem with, besides the training portion of it, is I don't know if you heard about the journalist who applied to ICE, who had like all this like anti-ICE stuff all over her social media. But she applied to ICE, right? And she got in. She got into ICE, no problem. They didn't conduct a background check on her. They didn't have her do a drug test. Um, they didn't do what they're supposed to do for federal agencies, right? Like,
Yeah.
I've never been a federal agent. Um, I've never even been law enforcement, right? But like, joining the military, I had a top secret security clearance. Like, they dug into my life
Yeah.
hardcore, dude. Like, everything and anything. Like, they talk to my parents, they talk to my friends, they talk to my teachers in school. Like, why aren't we doing that for these people, these law enforcement agents, these federal law enforcement agents who can end your life, whether it's by, you know, taking your life with a firearm or taking your life in the sense of removing you from the country. Why are we not conducting those background checks? Why are we not making sure that these people don't have a history of violence or sexual assault or are mentally stable, for God's sakes? You know, I'm pretty sure as a law enforcement officer, right, you've gone through mental evaluations
Yep.
before, even before you were a police officer, right?
Yep.
You've had background checks. Like
100%.
they need to go through these things. And in my opinion, like there are officers out there, right, who have engaged in sexual misconduct or have beaten their wives or broken the law. It's kind of brushed under the rug, right? In some instances, it's brushed underneath the rug and hidden away, or they 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 went on administrative leave for however long. In my
Yeah,
opinion, like
I think there's a lot of that.
they need
So
to be held accountable.
what do
Just
you
because
think?
you have a badge does not mean you're above the
Right.
law.
What do you
Period.
think? What do
Period.
you think? Do you think that because this is a good conversation that we can have this real quick and we can start to wrap
Yeah.
up. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I look at this problem and yeah, I'm not gonna pretend like I know what the best and right answer, but I think the biggest problem with law enforcement we have is when it comes to this, right? The police certification does not mean a whole lot, right? So how do we get the best of all worlds? Like to be a firefighter, like that licensure comes it's harder to get. To become a nurse, harder to get, right? Like
Yeah.
people really care about their nursing license. People, fire, they really care about their licensure. Police, I mean, it's not super difficult to get. I think that's one problem. Another problem is pay, right? Like they
Yep.
have this saying, you don't join the police department to become rich. I agree. You certainly don't.
Same
But
with
my
the
question
military.
but my question to you is how much do you care about the service you get? Because do not expect law degree service on 17.50 an hour. You're not
Oh
going to get
no,
it.
absolutely not. I
Most
mean,
most cops I know, especially and every place is different. Everybody wants to talk to. Well, the NYPD makes and the cost of living NYPD is
cool.
ridiculous.
Yep.
But
It's insane.
I know, and I'm one of these cops, right? Every cop I know, to include myself, has secondary employment. I'm lucky enough where my
Mhm.
secondary employment is something that benefits my job, right? So my
Yeah.
secondary
Yeah. You're
employment,
fortunate.
yeah, it benefits me, it makes me a better cop. And so, I look at all this stuff and I'm like, well, you want a higher level of service, but you're not going to get it with what you have. And then here's another thing, right? Like people, let's talk about transparency, right? The military, right? If you get dishonorably discharged at 19 years old, you're done. You're done.
Yeah. You're cooked
But
for life,
you're
dude.
cooked for life. But if you lose your police certification, oh well, you could turn around tomorrow, get a CDL, drive truck, and make probably almost double what you make as a cop. So I think
Yep.
until all these things are looked at appropriately, I don't think that you're going to get a better police force, right? Like you have to pay them more. You have to hold them more responsible. Like if police officers had a dishonorable discharge modifier or code modifier where, hey, if you get dishonorable discharge from law enforcement, guess what? You can't even be a janitor at the VA. I think that would change some stuff, right? I think that would give more power and transparency to the people. But also with that, you also have to look at the benefits part, right? Like veteran disability benefits are huge. I don't think
Hmm.
that we would have the military we have if we didn't have those. So these are all things that people need to look
Let's not
at,
jump
right?
down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, I'm just
You know what I mean?
well, I don't care. I'm an open book, but it's just one of those things where if we want to look at this honestly, like we have to look at all these different factors honestly. Like I'm 100% willing to say, hey, we need education requirements, right? I don't mean a degree. I'm not saying that, but we need these people like there should be like for in the military, like before I could go out, before I got my wings, right? I had to show all this proficiency. I had to get boarded, right? I
Yep.
was standing at attention for hours answering questions related to my work and what we do. As I'm saying that we need to do that for law enforcement, I'm not saying it needs to be like that, but you know how many cops are running around where if you were to ask them, "Hey, officer, define reasonable articulable suspicion for me."
They can't.
Define probable cause. Okay. Can you give me a case law that justifies what you just said? They can't do it, but they're out there making arrests. They're arresting people in real life.
Yep.
You know how
Mhm.
scary that is?
I think part of fixing the issue is, and I will say this about almost every profession, okay, especially the people that work in helping the community, right? Because that's what police officers are supposed to do. They're
Supposed
supposed to
to.
help the community. Yeah, air quotes, right?
Yeah.
Um, so my both my parents were teachers. Okay, teachers very underpaid. I know you're a teacher as well,
Yeah.
right? Teachers are very underpaid.
Well, you don't
They
want to
are.
know
They
why
they,
you
they
don't
just
want to
they
know
just
why I became a teacher.
no. I
You
kind of
don't.
listened to why
Did you?
the
Yeah.
reason
Isn't
why you
that
were going with
crazy?
Mr. Green. Absolutely
I just want to help, man.
ridiculous.
I want to give back, and it's just the red tape. But
Exactly.
but yeah.
But
But no, I
some
get
but
it.
some people aren't like you. They don't care about
Well,
giving back.
let me ask you a very
Giving back.
pointed question, okay? And you don't have to
Yeah.
answer it if you don't want to. Um, I've made some waves here where I'm at. I have some people that look at me a little funny right now. Um, I will tell you
Oh,
very quickly
excuse my French, but
my opinion on the walkouts, the school walkouts for ICE. My personal opinion,
mhm.
and I think I did a video on it. My personal opinion is um, I think that we are going about it in the worst possible ways for both ends, right? I will tell you, my kids are going to know how to protest. They're going to know about civics. They're
Yeah,
going to know about their rights. They're going to learn that from me. Like I'm telling you, I'm
good.
state police. My kids are going to know how to protest. They're going to know their civics. They're going to know their constitutional rights. I say that to say because walkouts are horrible in the security infrastructure apparatus of keeping kids safe. And then, secondly, we're not teaching them civics. We're not teaching them how to protest. We're not teaching them anything. I think if you want kids to, I think the best thing that we should be doing is education, educating our kids, having them walk out on the sidewalk and not knowing what they're protesting or knowing how to protest is doing them just a disservice. And then not having them in school where it's a safe environment is also not doing them a service. Why can't we say, hey, this is an issue going on. So we're going to go to the football field and we're going to teach our kids how to protest. We're going to teach them their rights. We're going to teach them the issues. We're going to let them protest. We're going to let them scream. We're going to let them shout. We're going to let them hold signs. And we're doing it all in a safe environment. And they're going to actually learn how to do this for real. Like we're going,
Maybe not get run over by a
yeah,
car,
you know,
or
what's wrong
beat
with
or
that, right?
punched in the face or any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I
It's
agree.
the best of all
I
worlds.
but the
They get out
problem
of
is,
class, they learn how to actually do
yeah,
this for
right.
real, and then if they decide to do this on their own time, which they probably won't, at least they were taught right. But
Exactly.
what's your
But
opinion on the on teaching kids civics in school and teaching them how to protest? Like, is that a bridge too far, or what do you think?
absolutely not. I believe that, I kind of talked about it a little earlier, like teaching children their rights and civics and about our history, good and bad, right? Good and bad. No one ever wants to teach the bad stuff. It's always, oh, let's teach the good stuff. But I believe personally that I that children should be taught how to do things in a safe manner. Period. Whatever it is, right? Will that happen? Absolutely not. Because you're going to have that one parent or those two parents get pissed off that the school took them away from learning the diameter of a circle, or you put the exclamation point here, or um, the ancient Spartans would be abandoned in the woods at the age of 7 and had to fend for themselves for a year before they come back and get military training from provided by the state. What is that going to do for 98% or 99% of kids? Nothing. It's not going to do anything for them. Teaching them how to protest, teaching them their civil rights, teaching them civics and how the government functions as a whole is way more important than what kind of sword a Spartan used 3,000 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, if they're already going to
That
do the
stuff,
walkouts,
it's not going to,
if the walkouts are
I,
already going to be a thing, I don't know why we just didn't allow them to.
safe environment,
Yeah. Okay,
safe
you don't want to be
environment.
in, you don't want to be in a classroom right now. Okay, cool. Here's the best of all worlds. For the kids that have some sense and they don't want to do that, they can stay in school. But hey, if you are just so upset about this ICE thing and it's all political, hey,
Or whatever it is.
there's some steam. So hey, guess what? This is the best of all worlds. You're not going to be counted tardy. We're going to
Yep.
make this educational.
Yep.
Parents, you know your kids are safe.
Yep.
Teachers, if you don't want to be involved or whatever, you can have a planning hour.
Yep.
We're gonna bring Mike in, constitutional law degree. He has a law degree. He's state police, advanced certificate. He's going to come in with his team and he's going to teach you guys how to protest. Get your signs. Get ready, yell and scream. We're going to go do it.
But what it all comes
What's so
down to,
controversial
Brian,
about that?
some people don't want that. And
But
B,
they want their
money.
kids out in the street. That's my thing.
I
It
mean,
blows my
I
mind.
don't think I don't think most parents want their kids out in the street. I think the kids are going along with what their teachers are
I agree.
expressing. And I don't believe that teachers should put their politics on students.
I
Okay.
agree.
And that's coming from someone, okay,
With two
back when I
parents.
was in high school, right? Back when I was in high school, I had a teacher who was very Republican and let people know how she felt about things. And I had a very left leaning and democratic uh, teacher as well, who was not afraid to let people know how he felt about it. And at the time, I can tell you, I was not as much of a constitutionalist as I am now. I was very much raised in a Republican household. And I don't think that it was right for either of them, left, right, middle, to put their politics on me. Your job is to be an educator, not an influencer. Kids will learn things at home, and if they're interested later on in life, they will learn for themselves. Because it, like I've said a million times over, it is not your job as an educator to put your politics on people. Just like it is not anyone's job to put religion on people. I'm also a big component of that. Do not push your religion on me. I will not do the same to you as in that aspect as well. We were getting off topic on that one, but like if children want to learn to protest, whatever it is, whether it's I don't like the price of milk or I think milk is too cheap, they should know how to protest. They should know how to be safe and how to act in those situations. They should also learn civics and their rights as Americans, because those are all things that will affect you in your whole life, not just your school life. I don't think that taking these kids out on the street is very safe, but at the same time, with how many mass shootings we do have in this country, I don't think it puts them at any more of a risk than being in school. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword on that one, right? Like we do our best, we do our best to protect kids in the sense of, you know,
And that's
trying to keep them as
and
safe as possible, right?
that's the
But like,
scariest and that's the funniest, yeah, and that's the funniest part about it because if my team were to go out there at the football field and teach them civics, they'd be the safest they'd ever be because my team is all made up of state law enforcement officers. So yeah,
yeah, but
it's just
that's in your
wild.
instance. Like out here, it wouldn't be that way because, in all honesty, I have very little faith in a lot of the police officers in my area,
Sure.
and I not because they've ever done anything wrong to me or um, put me in handcuffs for no reason. It's because I've watched them. I've seen what how they act with people, and I always say, just like every other activist or auditor will tell you, the camera or Jeff Gray,
Yeah,
I like to quote Jeff Gray,
I like Jeff Gray.
this is the magic mirror.
Yeah,
This will show you who you truly are. If you are a jerk on camera, I can only imagine how you are off camera. So, like, I've seen them be disrespectful, I've seen them be unprofessional. And that's not something that I necessarily want my child to deal with. I don't want him to have that experience with law enforcement. But at the same time, I also don't want him to be afraid of law enforcement. I'm
right,
not afraid of anybody. What scares me, well, that's not true. I am scared of people. I am scared of people who are not trained with firearms and are willing to use that firearm for no reason. That scares me. But when it comes to you and your team, I have faith that those kids would be protected. Around here, I don't think we have enough public officials, and I'll use that as a broad term to include
sure,
political figures and law enforcement that would honestly give a crap to help make sure that happens. And
yeah,
that's sad. That's sad because our political leaders are supposed to do what we want. They're supposed to be our voice. That's why we elect them. You know,
right,
but when it comes to the law enforcement side, like I think, I think I heard this on your podcast. I think the bridge is burned, and what
yeah,
is it going to take to rebuild that trust? And honestly, I don't right at this point in time, with everything that has happened within the last 20 years, and even the 90s, even though I was a baby then, the bridge has been not only burned, but the ashes have also been cremated. Like the bridge ashes have been cremated, and then the river that holds that the for the necessity of that bridge has been dug wider,
yeah,
and it's going to be really, really, really hard to rebuild that sense of trust. Now, I know you kind of asked me about like what I think would help with holding police accountable. Um, I think having like a nonpartisan, biased civilian board, review how police officers acted in situations where, you know, uh, police related shooting happened. You know what I mean? Like, I think that a board of civilians would help, say, okay, we need to have this officer removed from the force or not removed from the force. Like they were justified in how they acted. They were unjustified in how they acted. Whenever police officer breaks that law and or any other law for that matter, like, you know, sexual assault or battering or any of that kind of stuff, like there should be a board where people are able to see what happened and make a decision. Because as an employee of the people, right, that should be something that happens. Because when if you were to get in trouble, let's say you work for TJ Maxx or for Lockheed Martin, you break a rule, right? What's going to happen? HR is going to get involved, right? Human
right.
resources is probably going to get involved with you. And we've seen that even like with town halls, they're not they're not people who are bipartisan. They work with those people every day.
Do you think so? I've heard this. I've heard this a lot. I personally, so I did a video on this. I've looked at a lot of citizen review boards. factually they don't work. The reasons why they don't work is your city council is made up of elected officials, right?
Mhm.
What would a citizen review? Do you believe a citizen review board in the same city that those elected officials would be in would look any different? That's the first
And
thing that people
that's
have to look
I
at.
don't think that I'm the right person to ask
No, I
that
know.
question
I'm
or
just
have that
kind of
answer.
I'm just ad sensing
Um,
it.
I think that
But you see what I mean?
it's a
So
complicated issue.
it
Yeah,
is.
and I get where you're going with that.
Yeah. And so, because I think
And
it,
it's
because
hard.
we're on the same, serious thing, we're on the same agreement. It needs to be better. I think the problem is we look at things and we don't, but unfortunately, sometimes when we start looking at the why, it starts to, okay, that kind of makes sense. Like, because I can tell you for the city that I'm at, I would not expect a citizen review board to look any differently than the politicians that are elected, right? And so the question is who gets to elect those review board members, and then what gives them the power to remove somebody. And then here's another thing that I think about, like a cop like me, like I would almost be elated if they're like, "Hey, you did something wrong. We're firing you." And it's like, "Okay, cool. Well, I acted constitutionally, and now I'm going to get my union rep involved, and I'm going to sue the city now because you guys are firing me for something that I didn't do anything wrong. Like I maintained qualified immunity, or it didn't even. I never got charged with a crime because X, Y, and Z." And so these are all reasons why I feel like these citizen review boards don't do well because number one, it's a bunch of people that convene that complain, but they're not given real authority. And then if you do give them real
Yeah.
authority, how is that authority check mark? Like, are they saying, well, Mike, I don't like that you did this. I know you gave all the case law. I know you did everything by the book, but we don't like it, so we're going to fire you. And I say, perfect, great. Here's your lawsuit. I
Well, I mean,
expect, I expect I expect at a minimum a $500,000
so
payout,
like
and then I expect $500,000 payout, and then I'm going to start work here again in a couple months.
well, that's the thing, right? Like if you didn't break the law, then there's no reason for you to go in front of that board,
Well,
right? So
you
like
would say that, but I mean, if I broke
where
the
you
law, what's the purpose of a review board if I'm already being charged with a crime?
sometimes officers aren't.
I agree. So how do we go? How do you go about doing that and reducing the risk again to the city? And I think there's a way to do it. And the way to do that is we have to, and I'll send you this too. We have to change the law. So there's only one or two states where it's so if I were to unlawfully arrest you, what crime did I what crime did I break? Do you know?
What's that? I'm sorry.
If I illegally arrested you, right? Let's say I
Mhm.
arrested you and it was illegally, what crime would you charge me with? I say this because people will
Um,
say kidnapping, and then I'll say, "Well, look at the jury instruction for kidnapping."
I would say unlawful detainment.
Okay, what law is that? Can you Google
I don't know
unlawful?
off the top of my head. I'm not
Yeah,
even
and
gonna lie to you, but
the reason why I say that is because you're asking the right questions. What I'm
yeah.
saying is that those laws don't exist. So I'm sending you something right now on Instagram. Um, Sending a message, I would create an unlawful detain arrest statute, and this is what the requirements are. No person shall be convicted of unlawful detain or arrest unless the state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that each element of the crime are present. The elements: number one, any police officer defined in state statute. So in Oklahoma, 21 statute 99. Two, willfully. Three, detain or arrest. Four, without lawful authority. Five, any member of the public. So all five have to be met, and if they're met, you can charge somebody. You can charge a police officer with unlawful arrest or detainment. This is huge because qualified immunity would not. They wouldn't be able to argue qualified immunity because qualified immunity, Pearson versus Callahan, states that they have to violate a constitutional right or an established state statute. So if you or established statute. So if this was established even on a municipal level, they can't claim qualified immunity because they violated the statute because they willfully. How do you unwillfully put handcuffs on somebody? How do you unwillfully detain somebody? Right? So you would have to prove that they did not have the lawful duty authority to do so, and it was a member of the public, which is anybody. And then there is your teeth for accountability. The problem is the statute doesn't exist. So if the statute doesn't exist, you're trying to do a kidnapping statute. You're trying to do another statute. And this is where the guy lost it because I said, okay, you believe that cops are doing the right thing. So why can't we why can't we implement this? And no cop is gonna do it. I have no problem with it.
Mhm.
I think that this should be something that can be implemented overnight. So your city councils all over the country overnight could implement this and say, yes, we want to make sure that we have transparency, accountability, and if an officer acts unlawfully, if they unlawfully detain somebody, it is a misdemeanor crime. It can be something a small misdemeanor crime, but guess what? That's going to be on the record.
Yeah,
So
as it
they need
should
to
be.
make sure.
Be on mine, it should be on theirs.
I just sent it to you. So you'd look at that. You tell me what you think
Yeah,
later. But
will do,
um,
bro.
I just think that I agree. I think if we're looking at accountability, I think something like this would go way farther than a citizen review board that either has no teeth or has too much teeth
Yeah.
and will end up hurting
Just
itself.
hurting the taxpayers, right?
Yeah, because you're right. Because I think that's important because we're all taxpayers, and
Yep.
I think that lawsuits they have a purpose, but I don't think lawsuits are the most effective way to hold people accountable. Because guess what? Cops
Right.
do they pay it? No. What do they end up doing? What do they end up doing? They end up just hey, they'll resign and they'll disappear and they'll show up somewhere else. So how do we address that?
Yep.
Right? Would you agree that's the biggest problem? Well, if you get
I
one of
think
these,
that's one of the biggest problems. Yeah.
if you get one of these, guess
I
what?
think it's one of them.
Yeah, if you get one of these, guess what? Hey, now that follows
You
you.
can
Every time
never
a
be a
background
law
check is
enforcement
done,
again.
yeah, look at that. You've unlawfully arrested somebody. And then it sounds horrible. It should only take one, but maybe you put a state statute in that says, hey, if you have three of these, you can no longer have a police certification. It should only be one, but again, you gotta get it to pass somehow. So again,
But then you fall into that line of them moving to another state and
well,
getting their law enforcement certification
sure,
there.
but if this is
That's why it
a
would have to be a
well,
federal thing
no, I
too.
mean, if you get arrested for DUI in Pennsylvania, I can see that on an NCIC here in Oklahoma.
Well, yeah, I mean, but at the same time, I guess, I mean, but it would all, there's going to be those states that are like, well, if you do this in this state,
Sure. But
or
I
if you do
think,
in another state, whatever.
but you have, again, you have your Ron Durbins of the world. Like, imagine if you found out a cop came from Idaho and there was a statute that says unlawful detain and arrest, and he had that on his record, and you presented that at his reputation's tarnished, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think it's a good starting point for accountability, right? And again,
Mhm.
don't arrest and detain people. You don't have the rightful authority to do that. Because again, the standard, in my opinion, reasonable articulable suspicion standard is not very high.
Too low.
There's no
I agree.
reason. Many people would say too low. So there's no reason why you should be. I guess what I'm trying to say is most cops will go their entire career without unlawfully arresting people, right? Like as crazy as it
Yeah.
sounds, we think that this happens all the time. It really doesn't. We just get to see it on blast more and more. But it's not hard to not. Can we agree? It's not hard to not illegally arrest somebody, detain somebody.
No,
Like literally,
I agree
it's
completely.
as
Yeah.
simple as just not doing it.
Yep. I, I mean, you can say
I'm
that
not
about anything.
literally.
Yeah.
You know how you don't get in trouble for illegal detaining it. You just don't take action unless you're sure.
Or, yeah, that's true. I thought you were going to say something different. That's what I was going to be like, just don't do anything wrong.
Well, no, it's not that. Just don't take action, right? Like just don't take
Yeah.
like literally. If you're not sure, how do I for sure know I won't get arrested? Okay, well I'm just not going to force you to identify yourself. I'm going to take pictures. I'm going to have all this information, and we're going to follow up on the back end. Guess what? You'll never get in trouble. Hey,
Yep.
I don't know who he is, but I'm not going to detain him. And I'm not going to take his ID, but I'm going to stand here as a presence regardless. And there's
Yeah.
nothing that you can do about it. You can be mad. Oh, so you're not going to go to work? I'm paying you to go to work. Who cares? Yeah, he's going to say whatever he wants, but this bank is worried. Even if you were upset about that, there's nothing unlawful by him standing with the bank until you leave. I think even you would agree
Yeah.
with that. Um,
No, I agree. I mean,
there's nothing illegal with that. You may think it's overkill, but guess what? Oh well,
I will tell you this though. I have never left before a cop.
that's fine.
I'll wait there 5, 6 hours,
Sure.
but I will never, I have never left before a cop.
So again,
because it's one of those things where I don't want them to think that because they called the cops on me,
sure,
that they ran me off.
sure.
Because if I'm not doing anything illegal, oh,
Yeah, I
and
just
and that's the end of it, you know.
yeah,
So I agree with you though on a
there's
lot of
just so
on a
many
lot of
there's just so many more ways to skin that cat than violating your rights for standing on a
yeah.
public right of way recording.
Wait
So
till I leave and watch me get in my car, run my license plate. Boom, there you go.
so
Like
let me ask you
figure
this
the
last
problem out
question.
for you.
Let me ask you this last question, and we'll end it up
Yeah.
here. What are your opinions on what are your opinions on body cameras for citizens?
So I look at it this way because I do record on a regular basis. Doesn't bother me at all. We're getting recorded 5, 7, 800 times a day as it is. I don't see an issue with people having body cams. My only issue is how are we getting those body cams? Are they required now by law, or are people using them as their own personal use?
No, what do you think
Because I'm
about everyday
afraid,
people? Yeah, what do you think about everyday people? Like people talk about their concealed carry, what they carry on,
mhm,
their concealed carry loadout. What are your
yeah,
feelings on everyday people starting to carry body cameras?
why not? You're allowed to record. I mean, you just have to follow, time, place, manner, and then, you know, obviously if it says no recording, like you're not going to go into a doctor's office and record, right? Like you shouldn't anyway. I mean, because it's a private business, right? Like obviously in private businesses you shouldn't be recording,
So
right?
let's do a thought exercise because this is one I did on a video. So I do a EDC. I have a little EDC body camera that um, I've been starting to implement, for just various things, just because I'm curious about like I
Yeah.
said, I take this whole constitutional thing seriously. So what I think is interesting, right? I think people get upset. Tell me if you're wrong. They get upset by this, right? The
Yep.
action of this is what pisses people off, right? You're
Yep.
walking around, you have your little recording sticks and stuff, and I think that's what gets people amped up. But here's my question, right? So, Neuralink, I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's Elon Musk
Yep.
thing. So, what happens if you have a military veteran, right, lost his eye in combat, and they put a Neuralink eyeball that has recording features? Should that person be arrested every single time they walk into a venue that is upset?
No, but at the same time, I don't think most people would know that he is recording
So
simply because of the fact that
I
it's a
agree.
device
I
you can.
agree. So that's what it comes down to. So are people upset about the action of it being in your face, or are they really upset by the fact that recording is just happening?
I think it's a combination of the two. Um, I personally have never put my camera directly in someone's face ever. I've never done it. Even right now, like my camera is like halfway across my table. Like I think it's the action of going like this and holding that camera where everyone can see, and they're like, "Why is this dude recording me?" Even if there's a camera directly over your head by the business or by the postal service
Yeah.
or by the police department,
So
like,
do you think the police? So let's say I had a body camera on my chest, right? Like the one I just showed you. It's on
mhm,
my chest.
yeah.
My hands are free, and somebody's like, and I go tell somebody, hey, let them know that I'm recording the bank, right? Just so that we can get the law enforcement action, right? Do you think law enforcement would treat me differently if I have a body cam on my chest? I'm just standing there versus this.
I think that they would with the body cam, especially the everyday carry body cam that you have, right?
Yeah.
That's so small that if they do see it, they'll probably be like, "Oh, are you using this for nefarious reasons?"
Okay.
Right? That might be a little suspicious.
Okay.
I think it's less suspicious that I'm holding my phone out or my GoPro
Cool.
and recording. I feel like that's less suspicious because I'm showing you exactly what I'm doing. there's no question about it, right? There's no, oh, is he recording or is he not recording?
So again,
And
so
I think
it goes back to
that's
the
big.
I use this thought exercise because case law is going to have to make a decision because in my opinion there is
Hmm.
no difference between per case law, because that's all I care about. I don't care about feelings. Per case law, there's
Yeah.
no difference between this versus it being on my chest versus I have an eyeball that's
Or
recording.
being
So
in your glasses,
yeah. So what
any of
happens?
that
So
stuff.
what
There's no
happens
difference.
if I go tell somebody, hey, go tell the bank I'm recording, and I'm standing outside. Law enforcement comes. They said, hey, we heard that you were recording, and I say, okay, yeah, well, I'm a military veteran. I lost my eye. I have a Neuralink eyeball that records everything. Do you think they'd treat me differently then? I'm doing the same thing. I'm getting the same footage. Nothing is changing. The only thing that has changed is how somebody perceives the recording. People receive this as suspicious or annoying. People see the body camera on the chest as less annoying, and then it's kind of hard to be annoyed with somebody's eyeball, right? And I think ultimately that's where we're going to go because as technology goes, we're going to be Star Wars one day, you know? And so
Yeah,
these
scary. Or Skynet.
decisions are going to have to be made. So it's just something I as an officer, that's how I look at it. I look at you doing this as the same thing as your eyeball. I cannot, you know, I can't what's it called? I can't trespass your eyeballs, you know? So I don't address it. I don't deal with that because it's not the risk reward factor there is not even close to being there. So I just want to know what your opinion is because I feel like, you know, when we see that in real life, the first time we see a military veteran with a Purple Heart and Bronze Star, like my buddy Jack Crowley, if he were to have if he were to have a, you know, a Neuralink eye, yeah, go arrest that guy for being inside a public building while recording, right? Because what would happen is he would record and then nobody would worry or know about it. He posted on YouTube and everybody realizes, oh, you have an electronic eye feature. So everywhere he goes now, it's like, well, are you recording? Or are you not recording? Well, I'm gonna
Yeah,
have the right to
I
remain
think
silent.
it's weird.
Yeah, you know,
I think I think you're right. Case law does need to catch up on that. And I think that it all stems back to education. If you are under the perception that everyone is recording at all times, no problems.
yeah,
But
and that's how I
That's
just
it.
yeah, and that's how I justify why I'm not going to have to worry about illegally detaining somebody. Let's say I didn't know, right? Let's say somebody like the U.S. versus Cordova 2024, right? Let's say there is somebody that is in that that walked through that threshold they weren't allowed to, but they're doing it with a bionic eye. Am I making that arrest? I'm not. I'm not going to make that arrest. What I'll do is I'll write a report. I'll annotate it with all the case law. I'll give it to a magistrate or a U.S. attorney, a USA for prosecution, and I'll let them make the decision. But I am not going to violate that person's rights because guess what? Um, I can keep everybody safe and not violate somebody's rights. Does that make sense? Like I could
Yeah,
do
I
it
agree. I
safely
agree.
without violating people's rights. You could be upset with how I did it, but guess what? I stayed here. You were
That
safe.
is right.
Nobody got hurt, and he was charged after the fact. But I'm not going to go out of my way to, because that's how I look at it, man. And that's why I give you that exercise because I think it'll happen in the future. And if I
Yeah,
treat every encounter above board and I adhere to the standards I know that are there, I'll never get in trouble.
exactly. And that's why I say like everyone should be have that perception that they're being recorded at all times.
Yeah,
And if you do that as a civilian or a police officer or even a town hall employee, you'll never be wrong.
I
So,
agree. Well,
well,
I
with that note,
appreciate.
brother, I hate to cut you
Yeah,
off.
I appreciate
I
you.
gotta go. I got a family thing. So,
Any last words for
um,
everybody?
hey, just respect everyone's rights. Thank you all for taking the time to watch this conversation with Mike and I. I'd love to do it again.
All right. Well, I'll put
I
your
think what we did here was very educational for everybody.
yeah,
So
I'll put your stuff down in the description box below. Everybody take a look at it. Hopefully
appreciate you,
we can
brother.
do it again.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Absolutely. And have a great day. Okay. Stay
You
safe,
too.
brother.